Welcome to the January 19th, 2021 meeting of the Windham Southeast School District. Thank you for coming. I will occasionally be adding people in, so if I seem distracted, that's why. We know the meeting has been warned. We have a few changes to the agenda. The first is we will be entering a brief executive session shortly after these announcements. The second is on new business item B, the annual meeting Australian ballot warning articles. We're going to, there are a number of, some questions came up regarding the articles. We haven't seen the articles yet. The questions came up at the last minute, and I'm not willing to take that up in a hasty manner. It deals with transparency. So we will sort this out and send out the warning articles, and the board will have to have a brief meeting on January 26th at 6 p.m. to approve the articles. That puts us right in the middle of the 10 days between 30 and 40 days for warning the articles for the annual meeting. The other change is that new business C, the Academy Edition renovation project, we're going to move that up under the fiscal report right after the budget conversations, and then we'll resume our regular agenda after that. So we have I have some more people to admit. So give me a minute. And Michaela, I'm going to assign you to executive session. So please don't enter the executive session yet. We'll move in a minute to enter, and then you'll all need to, I think you'll all need to enter yourself. So could I have a motion, please, to enter executive session to discuss a contractual issue?
So moved. And
Thank you, Ann. Second, please.
Second. Second.
Was that Thomas? Thank you, Thomas. Moved and seconded to enter executive session to for a contractual matter. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, now I have to join. So we are back. We rise from executive session at 6:23 and resume our agenda. A couple more people in. Next item is consent agenda, approval of the minutes of January 5th, 2021. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Sean. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. So we moved and seconded to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2021. All those in favor, please unmute and indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We've approved the minutes. Next is administrative report. I'll just turn it over to Andy and he can give us our updates.
All right, I want to start by acknowledging the work of CJ Pride and Ben Robb, who both work for BAMS, as well as Chris Day from BUHS. All three are currently serving in the Guard and are down in DC right now, safeguarding our democracy. So I want to, just extend our thanks to those three and for their contributions. I have a handful of retirements to share first. Would you like them all at once, David?
Sorry, I was out of commission there for a minute.
Oh, I have a handful of retirements to go over first. Do you want them all at once, and then do you want them one at a time?
Well, I think let's do them all at once. And if you could send the names to Wendy, that would be very helpful.
Okay. First is Susan Rogers, is a teacher at BUHS. She is resigning and retiring. You would submit her name with congratulations and regret. Second individual is from the Career Center, Tom Pagella has submitted his retirement. The third person is Mary Beth Cornell. We would submit both those names with congratulations and regret. Don Linden is retiring from Putney after 37 years there and 2 years at BUHS. And Corinne Blakeson, who's a Spanish teacher at BUHS. So we would submit those names with congratulations and regret.
Thank you, Andy. So could we have a motion, please, to accept the retirement of Susan Rogers from BUHS, Tom Pagella and Mary Beth Cornell from the Career Center, Don Linden from Putney Central and BUHS, Corinne Blakeson from BUHS with congratulations and regrets.
So moved, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Second, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Great, the ayes have it, and we have accepted the retirements. Thank you, Andy.
All right. So we'd like to recommend the hiring of a potential third grade teacher at Putney. This is to help offset the large class size at Putney. Herb has zeroed in on an individual. Happens to come from Connecticut. We'd like to offer, we've been offered the position. We're submitting his name for contingent acceptance. His name is Jason Bueller, so I would submit his name as well. This is for the third grade position that remains until the end of the school year.
Third grade at Putney CS, Putney Central. Ann, did you have your hand up?
No?
Oh, okay, you came on my screen. Okay. We have a motion, please, to hire Jason Bueller to finish the year in the third grade at Putney Central School.
So moved. Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
Second.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. Moved and seconded to accept the application of Jason Bueller for third grade position at Putney Central School. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Hearing none, the application is approved.
All right. So the next, I've got a couple, updates on our planning for second semester. Our K-6 schools are all planning, as well as BAMS, are planning for 4-day return, starting the Thursday, the 28th. The 27th will be a transitional day between the semesters, and the schools are working out as they need to. Both Dummerston and Putney will be 4 days a week, K-6, but they will be 4 days a week with their middle schoolers after February vacation if the staffing needs are met. Both Dummerston and Putney are because of economies of scale and class sizes, are working on figuring out how to make it work safely for 4 days a week with the space requirements at the middle school level. And so we're anticipating that could take place after February vacation. Putney has planned in their PE teacher, who was a PE teacher of the year, recognized this year as a PE teacher of the year. We'll be giving 2 PE classes to each class per week. And the K-6 counselor at Putney will be doing SDL class per week. So that helps ensure that the teachers are getting their planning time and their daily lunchtime as well. BUHS is going to remain 1 day a week in person, as we've heard before. Career Center will be moving to 4 days a week. As the schedules have been developed, they've been shared with staff, and they've been careful to make sure that we're meeting the teachers' needs for their daily prep and daily lunchtime in that work. Most schools have shared class rosters, and we've moved to the areas where we're down to kind of site-based decision-making to address staffing and contractual challenges. There are some concerns around the ability to hire different positions. It's more pronounced in the smaller schools. I know that our student services special education department is struggling to hire paraprofessionals, for instance, in critical areas. And so that's an area that Shelley and Liz and Joe are still working on. There has been a great deal of, I would, be incredibly proud to say the great deal of creative problem solving that's gone on. BAMS used 1% funds about a week and a half ago to have a full day Saturday workshop with their teachers. And really it was anyone that wanted to come could come to do work on what the second semester would look like. One area where we've narrowed it down to is busing. That becomes, with more students coming into school on a regular basis, we've done some problem solving with Cosmescus, and Cosmescus has been a great partner to work with throughout this whole pandemic. We've still maintained the registration process for busing for the second semester. It doesn't mean that if children are eligible for a bus, they don't get one. If they don't register, they just have to register if they're in a transportation zone to be placed on a bus. The increased number of days will lead to an increased number of students riding the buses. We've shared that with parents. So it'll be a little more crowded than the first semester, but the bus company has worked to make sure that there are monitors on all the buses as well as substitute bus drivers. And so instead of maxing out and running more buses than we have contracted for, they have the ability to have some substitute drivers if a driver should be out ill for whatever reason. Cosmescus is still looking for more monitors, so they are hiring with a $1,000 sign-on bonus for bus monitors, for instance, and so they're facing some of the same staffing challenges that we're encountering. We've shared with families as well is that it'll be a little colder on the buses, so typically school buses don't open the windows in the wintertime, but by opening the windows at the front and the back of the bus, it creates an airflow through the bus, and so we've shared with families that it'll be a little colder on that. So that's where we are with reopening. Our principals and staff are still working this week and next week to get kids back in to start the second semester next week. So the other big piece of work is that our diverse hiring committee has started to meet. We had our first meeting on the 7th. That meeting, we addressed a lot of work around goal setting, with goals being really adding social justice and equity questions to our job applications. And so we have a consistent question that's asked on every application. We want to work on establishing protocols and procedures for exit interviews to gain a better sense of if an individual does leave WSESD or SU or Vernon, why are they leaving? We talked about expanding the reach for a wider audience and more diverse candidates. And so what are the tools we can use other than just School Spring? And so there was a great deal of discussion on what those tools would happen to be. As we also talked about marketing opportunities in the district for professional growth, as well as to provide information about the community. One of the things that teachers often will look for, especially heading into a new district, is what is their capacity to grow as a professional? And the committee talked about really encouraging in that step from recruitment to hiring, there is a bit of trying to encourage that person to accept that job offer. And so in terms of it's a bit of a sales pitch to get some high quality candidate to take the job offer, but to encourage them as part of our general conversation of these are the benefits of coming to work here. And so we talked a little deeper about recruitment and looking at conducting an analysis of what's the interest in developing pathways to teaching at a young age. And so looking at how do we know that the teaching job market is really hyper localized. And so we know that if we have a group of students that are going through a pre-K-12 education in the school district, if we get them connected to be successful in school, if they're exposed to teaching careers at a young age, they may have a higher likelihood of rejoining it. It's a bit of a long game, but having some of those pathways to teaching clubs will help. Stacy Musso, our HR director, has worked on expanding the number of application sites. And so she's looked into application sites like Handshake, and we're on, I think, 35 or more schools at this point. We talked about participating in local and regional job fairs once those start to be fully up and running again, as well as establishing partnerships with colleges and universities. And finally, with the idea of retention in that group, we talked for a bit about the use of teacher mentoring programs, connecting to statewide affinity groups, and identifying professional supports within the community. So what makes a person want to stay in the community may be Sometimes it's about what the professional growth and aspects that they can get out of that connection, but it can also be what type of roots are they able to put down and how comfortable are they able to feel within their school community. So that was the hiring committee. I will say that our leadership team just finished up a three webinar series with the Great Schools Partnership and the New England Secondary Schools Consortium. It was 3 1-hour webinars. All admin attended at least one session. Our HR director and I attended all 3 sessions. And within that group, it was a kind of a structured conversation and looking at different aspects of recruitment and retention and to expand the candidate pool to have a more diverse workforce, a more representative workforce. The sessions really highlighted the statewide aspect to this. And I only mention that because there were some kind of higher level conversations that had taken place around what are some roles where it would be appropriate for the state to think about where we can lobby for efforts upon the behalf of applicants, where they may be a little more flexibility to do that level of work. But the work in the webinar was more of an emphasis on systems level work, as well as providing some snippets into extra resources to broaden our search frameworks. So I said a lot in a short amount of time. So
That was an impressive amount of information in a short amount of time. Any questions from the board about the opening or the Diverse Workforce Recruitment Committee? Well, I have a couple, Andy. You mentioned that you developed a question to go on the applications.
yeah, we talked about developing, I can't remember what the
Oh, yeah.
exact question was, but it involves like, what's your experience with diverse communities, or what have you learned from this?
Mhm.
I see Michaela in my screen, and I think Michaela may remember the question that we picked. But I can't remember what it was exactly.
And that'll go on the application.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll ask Michaela to fill in any information she has in just a second. And what about did you talk about in the advertisements about focusing on the work, the commitment that the board and the district has made, or the work that we've been doing, and that we're looking for people to join us in continuing that work?
That's really part of the next step. So this was an initial meeting. And so as we get into the meeting this week, we'll break into 3 groups around recruitment and retention, and that middle ground of how are we encouraging people to take job offers if we do give them one. So that will really be part of the next work.
And is the group meeting every week or every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks for right now. We have a big push. We're hoping if the budget passes in March, we can get out the gate and start hiring. So we want a big push now,
Right.
between now and March 2nd. So that if we can get this body of work done, we can at least have some sort of a framework in place to move forward.
Great. Okay, Michaela, do you have any specifics or anything you want to add to that? You don't have to, of course.
And I did ask Michaela to attend tonight too, and she has, I think, 3 teacher leaders to present.
Yeah,
what they're
that's next.
looking-
I hope that's next.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to get through the diverse workforce part first.
Okay. Should I do that all together?
Yeah, you can just go from one to the other.
All right, thanks, Andy. So the question was, what's your experience working with historically marginalized people? So it's a broad question, and that can be interpreted. And I think that one of the discussions we'll probably have this week is, should we define what those groups might be for them, which probably would be likely because not everyone uses the same language. And what is your experience? What have you learned? And what mistakes have you made? But just thinking about, before this, I was actually in staff development, teaching in solidarity with Black Lives. And one of our readings was just about creating a community around teachers, of understanding teachers. So we're not just thinking about recruiting teachers of color, but also creating an environment where their colleagues are able to discuss and address issues of equity and social justice with them. So that's the hope. And that closes out that portion, I think.
Great, great. Again, any questions from the board about the efforts to get a more diverse workforce? I see. Anybody else, or from the community, or parents, or administrators? Okay, no hands. Go ahead, Michaela.
Okay, I just
Update on
want
the,
to, we're
this
good.
is update on the, your leadership, your teachers, leaders and the program.
So far it's going really well. I've only asked 3 just because of time crunch, and I don't, no one wants to be here all night, but I could ask everyone and everyone would have something to say, just to know that teacher leaders are really actively engaged in preparing faculty meetings. I know for sure Green Street, Academy, and Demerson and Oak Grove all have upcoming faculty meetings. So do other schools, but they're gonna be here to talk about them in person. That their ongoing book groups, especially Stamped, is being read at Oak Grove, and ongoing PD. All the teacher leaders are showing up at the Deconstructing Whiteness group along with other community members and doing teacher check-ins and really just creating the infrastructure we need to support each other and have the backs of all the teachers in the schools. But tonight I have 3 teacher leaders here. There's John Kersey from BUHS, there's Ellen Tumavikis from Putney Central School, and Myra I'm gonna say your name wrong, Artiaga from Guilford. Did I say it right?
You got it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So Myra, why don't you start and talk about what's going on with Guilford, and then we'll go down the line. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sure. So at Guilford, we have our staff meetings that are kind of focusing on nature and place, and connecting that to social justice. And our Daisy Guilford group that meets bi-weekly, we're focusing right now on the Black Lives Matter week, preparing for that, a statement that will go out to families. And that's pretty much all we're doing at Guilford for now. That's, yeah, very brief, very short.
Thank you.
Short is wonderful. Ellen, do you want to go ahead?
Hi there. I'm Ellen from Putney Central School, and I'm one of the teacher leaders along with Carrie Faye Horowitz, the librarian. And we've officially started our first affinity group at Putney Central, and they've been meeting over Zoom. And I think they've met twice so far, and it's an LGBTQ+ group. And I think the first meeting we had 4 kids attending, and that's being run by Carrie, the other teacher leader, along with another member of our social justice committee here at Putney Central. So that's really exciting. We also have started a book group within the diversity, or we're calling it the Social Justice Committee at Putney Central. And we just each got a copy of Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, and we are reading that and we're discussing it within our group, and eventually we'll form a staff meeting around what we've gleaned from that book that we can share with staff. So that's exciting. And then tomorrow we're meeting as a group to discuss our next staff meeting. Our first staff meeting was based on a summer reading that we had, all of the staff had read 7 different books, and we broke out into breakout groups and we discussed the books with common questions that could relate to each group, each book. And then we came together as a staff and discussed them. And this, for the winter, since everyone's so busy, instead of another book, asking staff to read another book, we're going to be doing a podcast discussion. So that we're going to sort of get the nuts and bolts of that down tomorrow and then schedule that staff meeting, which will be coming up soon. So that's all that's happening at Putney Central so far.
That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Kersey. Thank you, Ellen.
Hey, so I'm John Kersey. I work at the high school teaching English. And so the subcommittee at the high school, we're going to be meeting a couple times over the next couple weeks in preparation for a February 3rd faculty workshop. We're going to lead a session on critical consciousness, training in recognizing bias and aspects of white supremacy, with a real focus on 2 of the DEC's principles that I think are really interesting and important to our work. And the first is that this is a process rather than an outcome-based approach. And second, that we center student learning and the student experience at BUHS and all the work that we do. So that's going to be breakout sessions with some critical questions and faculty engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I just want to reiterate again that how important the teacher leaders have been to this work and how they have offered, and I'm sure you can ask principals, just really a pillar of support to the equity and social justice work that's happening in all the schools, and also a face. So that's really helpful, and just really it's just become just like the bones to hold up the work. So thank you. And thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, okay, well, as you may have noticed, I'm trying to get you in every few meetings to get an update, to keep it on the front burner, because having people in the buildings makes it visible and active and alive in the buildings, and we need to keep it that way at the board level and as well. So thank you for your work. So I think that's Andy. Anything else administratively to report?
Not at this time. No, I'm going to turn it over to Frank and
Great.
elementary principals.
Great, thank you.
Okay, here we go. So I do have a couple of updates for the board as a sort of continuation of our budget planning and development review. I've had Barb post a couple of documents on the website. I'll share them now, and David, maybe you could give me a share.
I think I did.
Okay,
I think you
very
should be able to
good. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I have a well, just as it's always good to get our bearings on the budget development process. So let me just super quick review. Here we are on the 19th. We've had the 3 rounds of review of the budget, and typically we would move forward after the 3rd review, which would be tonight, with a board approved vote on the budget, which allows us then to, of course, warn the legal meeting for March 2nd. And then Barb and myself and others would move forward with developing the annual report. The target of getting that out, sometime in early February, and then also planning for the public information meeting per law, within 10 days of the vote. So there's just a glance at the general timeline, not a lot of detail there, just a couple of highlights. And then, as Andy was saying, so important that we are able to move forward with staffing as we have retirements and folks moving to be as early as we can in the competing for the pool of candidates. So updates. We have a little bit of good news. It's not significant news, but the Agency of Ed has released a preliminary equalized student data, and it's actually up. I wasn't expecting it to be up. It's up 5 students, which does have a small impact. The version I had given you before of an estimated tax impact had us at I blow this up a little bit, had us at a 2.9% increase on student spending and per student spending, and we were also 2.9 on the projected tax increase, and now you see we're at 2.6, so a little bit of a reduction there, which also extends to the CLA adjusted after the real estate issues. So James at the Agency of Ed has indicated he does not expect to see much more in terms of changes with equalized students, so that's a relief. The headline news, I haven't heard anything specifically about the yield. We know how important that yield is, but the headline news continues to be pretty favorable around additional revenues in excess of projections, the earlier forecasts, and we're starting to hear more of the details around the CARES Act, the second round of CARES Act funding out of the federal government for us, for schools and state and local governments. So, I'm still optimistic that we'll hang on to that yield. I do want to make sure that folks are aware that the tax commissioner had an initial number of 10,763. It's right here in the document. He had a fair amount of language that said that's really not a very accurate forecast based on what he knew back in November when he was doing that work. So that's a quick update on an estimated tax impact. And then I've also added a few more statistics to our highlights. This is something that we typically include in the annual report. And what I've added is, after talking with the finance committee, we talked a little bit about how significant this note here is, that is a comparison of how we spend against the state threshold where they increase the tax liability. So I added that statement. It's the same thing that's on this data sheet, but people probably won't make that connection. But what it's saying is, yes, we're $19,432 per student, and the threshold is lower than that, $18,789. But because we have this $697,000 in exemption from the debt that's associated primarily with the high school, you take the difference, 19,432 minus the 697. There is no place that the state puts it there as a subtotal, but that is this number, 18,735, which I just wanted to emphasize for the board. It shows that we as a system are lower than the threshold when you take into account exemptions for having to build the building back in 2003, 3, and 4. And remember, that will go away. Approximately $2 million annually that's in our budget will go away in fiscal year 25. A couple other statistics. I updated the equalized students. We've already sort of gone over major drivers to this budget. Overall, it's very much in line with kind of a fairly modest inflation, right? Overall, we're looking at a 1.8% proposed increase for this plan. And here are the major drivers. None of these are really unusual. And we've talked a fair amount of detail about the capital plan in the finance committee. So we're continuing to sustain that. Special education was not a significant increase this year, but there it is. And we do have the somewhat, unfortunately, typical increase in health insurance premium costs. However, we do have these offsets to some of our cost increases, and we have seen a fairly large increase in outside placement costs for some of our students that need additional services, but we see that reversing in fiscal year 22 to some extent, not entirely, but so this is a reduction that we see associated with our student needs and the models we're building to support kids in the buildings. We're pleased to see a reduction in workers' comp premium, and that's largely associated with our favorable claims history. And then we will continue to see these reductions in debt. This is the interest rate based on the bond amortization schedule that was created many years ago that had these planned reductions in interest. So there's increases, there's decreases, and overall, remember, we come back to a fairly modest 1.8% impact. A couple of other data points I've added are some enrollment statistics. And we've talked a little bit about this in that, these figures are down more than we would typically see from one year to another. But we know they're largely associated with the pandemic and most significantly at the pre-K level, not so much in our grade levels at the building. So related to that, I also have on the website for your review, and this is also an update that I typically include, is the enrollment by town and then by grade level. This is the data that comes to us as part of the development of the equalized student statistic. So now we have 3 years of data for the Windham Southeast School District. And you saw from last year, here's total enrollment of all kids, pre-K through 12 in the November of 2018 period. We had a little bit of an increase in 2019, which would be a year ago. And then we have this decrease here that is unusual. But let me just point out here, you see over here in the pre-K, for the current, the year ago, November 2019, 226, going down to 155. That's where most of the decline is. And there's, I'm sure a lot of folks have insight into that, but you can imagine if we've got a lot of parents doing remote instruction on some of our hybrid days, supporting their students, it's logical that they might not be also sending a preschool sibling off to preschool, and that seems to be a major reason why we see such a large decrease. The other grade levels, you can see there are some declines there, but they're not nearly as dramatic as you see when you look at the changes. And in some instances, like here, the 8th grade, 173 going to 198, it has to do with just having a large group in the prior year, and that becoming the new cohort moving forward.
It looks like 10th and 11th grade are pretty large deductions too, 30 some in 10th grade, and I didn't quite get over
Yep.
30 in 11th as well.
Yeah, and I think that there again is, I think the pandemic has a greater impact on the pre-K and also on the higher grade levels. It's always good to keep in mind, it's this 226 becomes this cohort, 187. So you're assuming everybody advances a grade, but no question that this is the same impact statewide, and that is why the equalized student counts didn't drop, and the reason for that is they used this year, this 2019 data set twice. They did not drop this year and then add this year. That's what they normally do. They drop a prior year and add the new current year. They did not do that, but the reason why equalized students still changed a little bit is because they still apply the weighting. So as the elementary grades move into high school, that changes the weighting. They also applied the poverty, and that the result of that was to increase our equalized student count a little bit. Here's also data by site. And so here's the actual schools. And this is the most recent November data. And then here's the prior November data. So it's the same total, 2,330 kids, 2,509, same totals as we see up here, 2330, 25. It's just presenting it by actual school site.
Frank, do we have any data on how that's, how BIPOC students are doing?
In terms of enrollment?
Students of diverse backgrounds?
You're specifically talking about enrollment, Tim?
Right.
I think that might be available. I don't know if Paul Smith is on the call. It's not something that I get this data from the Agency of Education, but I suspect that data is available in our in the student census. They simply don't share that subset with me, but I can find out if that is publicly available. And
No, I'll ask Paul.
Actually, Tim, I think it'd be good if we all could see that. There may be some need for confidentiality at some point in that process, but I think it'd be good if we could all see that.
Sure.
Great, thank you.
And you're talking about the same kind of data
Well,
format?
no, if we can identify, well, I guess who the kids are that are not there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, this is all kids. No question about that. This is all kids. I think, Tim, that you're asking, do you have like a same data just for a subset of the population, right? That's
yeah.
I'm assuming, but all kids are in this data. No one is excluded from this data. So those were the budget updates that we thought were important to share, and typically, as I say, they're included in the annual report as part of public information. And then I did want to link this discussion to our next topic as well, the Academy project, in that from a budget point of view, we've discussed the capital plan, and we have the resources. You know, here we are with the capital plan, 1.1 million for fiscal year 22. And we have in this fiscal year budget, 738,000 out of that 1.1 million as part of a local source that's being raised in the general fund to help pay for those costs. And when we go to the Academy, Green Street, and Oak Grove proposal, I just wanted to reacquaint you. So as we have that discussion here, here's that series of payments that we have over the course of the next several years to address that project. And it's either that $125,000 figure is either to pay toward a bond payment, it could be toward a shorter term bank loan, it could be just a contribution to the full reserve fund. That's another one of those decision points we need to make fairly soon as to what is the method of financing. The conventional method is a bond vote, and it's a very attractive time to do a bond vote because interest rates are historically low. So I just wanted to sort of make that connection. The administration's recommendation is that we move forward with the Academy project, and from a budget implication point of view, we're ready to fund that cost and address what's becoming, I think, a pretty urgent need to address those learning environments. Any questions I can try to answer?
Well, maybe we can hear from the principals, the elementary teams.
Right, yes.
So David, Julianne is not able to join us this evening due to a family commitment, but we heard extensively from Dummerston earlier, so she will not be joining the elementary principals tonight.
Do we have a first volunteer? Overview of the budget?
I think
Well,
also,
Oops, go ahead.
what we had with the high school and BAMS was focus on particularly on new positions and programs. So, yeah.
Yeah,
You wanted
hi.
to jump
This
in?
is,
Okay,
yeah, this is Herv Pelletier, principal of Putney Central School. Thanks, David, for the opportunity to discuss our budget process, and good evening to everybody here. So just a quick overview of where PCS is currently. We have at present 186 students. We started the year with 191, but we had a few, I guess I'd call them defectors, due to the fact that we weren't able to offer a 5-day program, and a couple of area independent schools were able to do that. So a couple of kids went that way. A couple of other kids with their families decided that a formal homeschooling program was in their best interest at that time. So I only bring that up because I fully expect that they'll be back in the fall. At PCS, we've sort of been running contrary to the flow, and have had a modest increase in our enrollment each of the past 3 or 4 years, I think. So that's really been nice. That said, we still have hovering around 50% with free meals, which has been, good that people are taking advantage of it. Frankly, I think we could be a little bit higher if more people submitted the applications. So just in terms of our budgetary, our approach to the budget. So Frank provides us with excellent data each year at the start of the process that gives us a summary of the past several years of expenses on each of the line items that are in the budget. And I review that, go over the spending, intended spending versus actual spending, make notes about where we went over, where we went under. We solicit input from the teachers about what I would refer to as extraordinary expenses. So for example, if somebody says, hey, it's been a couple of years since I did such and such, and I'd really like to make an investment in that for the kids, we take a look at that and try to provide those things as well. Sometimes it means a little bit of shifting of revenue, but that's all part of the process. So if we underspend in one line and overspend in another, we want to make sure we cover that so that at the end of the year, we're in good fiscal shape. So looking ahead to next year, given the tumult of this year, I think that it's fair to say that our primary objective was to provide some stability or return to stability. So no major changes. We're level servicing the budget. In other words, we are looking to provide the same services in FY22 that we have this year, assuming everyone's going to be back in the house come September. We certainly hope that's the case. And no major changes in personnel. Obviously, Andy announced Don Linden's retirement, which is a big deal at Putney Central. He's been there for many, many years, and he's one of the backbone folks of the school. So we'll be looking at some point for a middle school teacher. So spread the word among your friends if you know anybody who might be interested in that. So next year, we're looking to provide a continuity to our programming, particularly in the areas of social emotional learning, the good work that's been done, the groundwork that's been laid around social justice work certainly is going to continue. And we're also looking to continue our, our work with the, what am I looking for? The social, not the social justice, but God. I didn't write it down. I'll get back to it in a second.
Late.
Sorry about that.
Long day.
Sorry about, yeah, no kidding. And my phone's blowing up with texts from somebody. Anyway, so we, all that said, we try to keep any increases modest. We know that the large percentage of our budget, like everybody else's, goes to salary and benefits. As Frank has mentioned, an anticipated increase in health insurance, 10%. That's not unusual at all. So we try to keep within the guardrails as far as the overall cost to the budget and to the taxpayers goes, while not depreciating or decreasing the level of services that the kids have available to them. So I've already talked about the little bit of horse trading that happens, and that's just a sort of shifting of priorities. One year we may have one program that we realize that we didn't really fully utilize, or we'd like to shift those funds to another program. And we do that as a fairly regular part of the process. So that's really about it. Our increase is fairly modest, as you've seen in the budget sheet, and that's the way we like to keep it. So I'm open to questions if anybody has anything specific to Putney Central.
Any questions first from the board for her and Putney Central? Any questions from the public? Oh, you knocked them out, Herb.
Well, okay. Tried to keep it compact.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, David, did you want Kelly to present tonight? I know she did a really lengthy budget presentation a few meetings back.
No, not necessary. Unless she wants to say more. No, I just wanted to make sure that we heard from everybody.
Mary Kaufman, do you want to talk next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks for having us tonight. It's nice to be able to share what's going on. So at Oak Grove, no major changes to the budget for this year. Really, we are just trying to get back to the kind of status quo and then make improvements from there. So we're looking at how do we return to or kind of reinstate our MTSS model and build on all of the things that we had been working on prior to the shutdown. We were working on several projects just in terms of building up our tier 1 supports and providing academic support for all the students who needed it. So it'll be nice to get back to that. We're also looking at what we can take from this pandemic, the things that we've learned, how students are learning, what's out there for students. We've learned a lot about things that can be done outside and things that can be done through technology that we'd like to continue to implement. So really trying to mix the best of both worlds is where we're coming from. A goal that we had this year that I had specifically, and then we as a school had set in our continuous improvement plan, was to improve communication with families and the greater community. So that's something that we'll continue to work on. We've been working with some apps and some other ways of, getting information out to families, working on translating for families as needed. And so that will be another area that we continue to focus on, along with family engagement and what does that really look like to engage all families. How do we make that happen for the students and for the greater community? Before the pandemic and we shut down, right, we're always going back to that. We had just started working on building up our tier 1 math instruction. I had a group of teachers that joined me. We were trying out the ESIP work. This year we've committed to that. And so I've got a great team of math leaders at school, and we're working out some new approaches that we'd like to carry over into next year. And one of the things that we're looking at is really getting as many hands-on manipulatives for students as we can so that they can learn math through tactile work. That's something that we've found to be really beneficial and that kids have responded well to, and that teachers have really also found to be engaging and also helping students make meaning of math. In terms of our grounds, we did a tremendous amount of work on our school grounds this past year. So we don't have a lot of huge upgrades to focus on, although we are looking to install some window blinds on our oldest windows. They're historical, so we can't take those windows down, but we can insulate them a little better. And that's something that Greg and I have been trying to get in place for some time. And I'm sure I'll have to talk to Frank about this because I think the other Brattleboro towns have some roof repairs that need to be done as well. So that's something that we'll be looking at in the near future. As our diversity team spoke a little bit earlier, we have developed a diversity, equity, and social justice committee at the school that has really been up and running and taking on things and really moving forward and moving the school forward. And so we're going to continue that work as well. There's also interest from parents. So how do we extend that out into the community and to continue growing that work? So no major changes. It's really about taking what we've learned through this experience and making it better, and improving on the things that we have done in the past and identifying things that have worked really well. Lots of, kind of small in-house projects that we can work on that are not going to take a huge amount of monetary contributions at this time, but so hopefully we've got our level funded budget ready to go, and I think we'll have a successful year. That's the plan. Open for questions if you have them.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions? Quiet group this
You
evening.
want to round out the Brattleboro schools?
Yeah, that'd be good.
I have a question, David.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't get to the.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you spoke up because otherwise I wouldn't know. I think you're muted, Emily.
Oh, sorry. So I noticed with the budgets of the high school that we did last time in Windham Career Center, we had talked about how some things were becoming more school funded versus like the entire district funded, or like there was change in local funding, Frank had said. So I wondered, like, I noticed that the social work budget for Oak Grove had increased significantly. Is that due also to a shifting in like locally funding that, or it seemed like also that it was like the benefits were different?
Yep, that's a good question. So we created a new position at Oak Grove. It's our family engagement and education coordinator, which both Academy and Green Street have a similar position. However, what we did at Oak Grove, in order to create that position this year, we ended our portion of the contract with HCRS. In order to make it a school-based position, which has given us a little more flexibility in how we can use that position, with the hope that over time we would be able to build in clinical hours or another clinician position. But for the needs of Oak Grove at this moment, that was the best move for the students and the families to be able to engage a wider variety of families as well as the students and we didn't have that flexibility when working within the contract. So it is a position that would have to be benefited through the school district.
But that was just to clarify, that was a non-certified position that was used to create that. So it wasn't on the certified side of things.
So what you're saying, just to be clear, because I'm not familiar with all of this, so I just I'm making some notes, is like, so you're saying it was an outside contract before, now it's you're no longer engaging that contract and it's an internal position, and therefore, because it's not just what's in that contract, you can kind of ebb and flow with the needs of your school.
Right. It was a contracted position with an outside provider. So now it is a school-based position. There is a job description that for this position. However, the job could grow in terms of what this position could do, whereas I could not do that when bound by the contract with the outside provider.
Okay. Awesome, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Mark, you want to talk about Green Street?
Sure.
So the theme of the Green Street portion of the budget is essentially to maintain the programs and initiatives that we have been building over the last 6+ years. And the budget process has been an important part of that growth. So I'd like to start with some data that we're very proud of. Over the past 6 years, the Green Street School scores in math and literacy have increased every single year. And to pair the academic data, we also have parent and student climate survey data that has shown that same increase year after year over the past 6 years. So I think that's a reflection of lots of initiatives that we have engaged in at the school, and the budget process has been an important part of that. So some of the initiatives that we have added to the school over the past 6+ years include things like stipends for teacher leader positions, increased parent and student support with the addition of a social worker position, an ever enhanced after school program that has led to increased student engagement. Typically about 80% of our population participates. A food service program that allows free meals to all families. Continued work around MTSS implementation and the ever importance of academic support teachers to do that work. And I think all of those things have been supported through, Bracktown board and this board, and have led to, greater outcomes at the school. So very proud of those things. The Agency of Education has also identified our school as a place to send leadership teams to learn from. So that has been taking place over the past 3 years, which is we're very proud of course. In terms of the building, a goal has been to enhance the school experience by updating and modernizing a school building that is close to 100 years old. So things we've accomplished are a state-of-the-art wood chip boiler, installation of that, energy efficient updates. Our entire building lighting is LED. We had a learning center that we have transformed into 6 office spaces and small spaces for small student groups. All of our hallways and classrooms have been repainted. All of the flooring has been redone with new carpet. In terms of our exterior campus, we've installed an outdoor classroom. We've had multiple retaining walls built to increase more garden spaces and more space for play for our children. We've also added new playground structures over the past 6 years. So again, the theme is to maintain what we've been working so hard to build. So really the budget this year for Green Street reflects continuing those initiatives. There's a small uptick in the custodial department where I'm hoping to hire a part-time custodian to assist with cleaning and disinfecting moving forward. But that's a very small increase. And then in terms of the capital side, we're looking at a 3-year roof replacement plan, which we would begin this spring. That's the summary for me.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark about Green Street? I don't see any. Are we, is that it? Is there anybody we haven't heard from?
Right. Hi.
Oh, yeah, John, there you are.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want to, like everyone else, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity tonight to talk about our elementary budgets. And I want to make a couple of disclaimers here. If you hear any heavy breathing in the background, that is a very old dog hiding out from a very energetic puppy who It's crazy. And if you're hearing loud bangs in the back, that's a very energetic puppy running around the house.
Can you tip the screen so we can see the dog?
Oh, the old dog. I don't know. See the
Oh,
old
yeah.
dog? He's hiding.
He knows how to rest.
He does. Oh my God. My son went back to college and he's left us with his 3-month-old border collie Australian cattle dog mix.
Oh, great.
Mellow, not dog. So I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. And it's a long meeting, so I'm not going to belabor the points. But our budget process follows the same patterns as my colleagues. And much of this is maintenance with the pandemic. Guilford Central School, I guess some highlights that I want to talk about with the budget process is that our enrollment over the past 4 years has increased from approximately 99 students to just recently 125 students. So we've seen an increase in our enrollment. And partly that is due to the programming that we have at the school and the work that we've done to increase student engagement and participation and excitement about our school. And that's through our nature-based pre-K, and over the last 4 years developing nature-based thematic instruction in our upper grades also. And the pandemic in many ways has been an opportunity in many ways for us to move our outdoor learning model to a new evolutionary stage that perhaps wouldn't have occurred without the current conditions. And our community has really responded through our fundraising in the fall. And we're actively engaged in some meaningful PD in a partnership with Antioch University around nature-based practices and project-based practices. So I'll go back to something that Myra Artiega mentioned earlier in speaking about the Guilford DEC work, and that is nature in place. So in working with Frank specifically about the Guilford budget, and we out here in Guilford have been parsimonious. That's been a tradition for many, many years in keeping our budgets low. So in my work with Frank, looking at our strategic plan, thinking about what are our big goals. And our big goals are, one is to continue as our other sister schools with a robust MTSS system to ensure that all our students are achieving at the highest possible levels. And much of that emphasis has been on literacy and math over the years. And we have some great AST teachers that help us with that. So it's very, very important in our work to maintain the staffing of 2 full-time AST teachers who in many ways act as literacy and math coaches. One has a master's from the Math Institute, the Vermont Math Institute, and the other person has a deep background in literacy instruction. So we've been able to maintain that in the proposed budget. Our scores have risen as Mark was speaking about Green Street. Our scores have also risen quite dramatically over the past 5 or 6 years. And much of that is attributed to the work we've done with our MTSS system. For us, a second big goal is creating a positive learning environment. And we've done tremendous work with our PBIS system and focusing on the social emotional needs of our children and maintaining a full-time counselor, which we do in this current budget. That's been our practice in the past. We do not have a social worker. So for us as an outlying school, it's very, very important to maintain that full-time counselor position. They act in many ways as a social worker as well as a counselor for the children. And then the third piece is our emphasis on thematic instruction, nature-based, project-based instruction. And that has a long history at Guilford that goes back a quarter of a century. And it's ebbed and flowed over the years. And in the last 4 years, we've really focused on our nature-based programs, environmental ed, and using our natural environment as a classroom. And we were doing that before the pandemic. During the pandemic, we've upped our game. And for next year, we want to continue to expand that programming. And so we have, with our farm to school coordinator, we've been able to increase, we're asking for an increase in our funding for our farm to school coordinator because we see farm to school as part of our nature-based practices. And we're also looking for a slight increase with our technologist. Others have spoken about the lessons learned through the pandemic and the good use that we've made of new and different platforms, and that we don't want to lose or forget any of the lessons learned through this pandemic. So we've interweaved technology more into our instruction, both remotely and in person, than we ever have, and we want to continue with that. An example being, we're doing a surveying project of our school property with our 6th grade, and our technologist is collaborating and co-planning and will be co-teaching with our 6th grade teacher on a very exciting project that will integrate a lot of surveying tools and using a lot of computer apps, et cetera, in doing that work. So we want to see our technologist position increase. And that person is part of our school leadership based team in thinking about our strategic plan. With that said, our budget is up, gosh, it's less than 1%. And much of that is due because we've had 2 major retirements that are occurring this year. One is with longtime teacher Karen Duggan, who's been with us for 34 years. And the other is with our planning room person, Lynn Toby, who's been with us. I think Lynn's been at the school for 26 years. And the planning room position preceded having step services in our building and preceded our current state of our outdoor learning project-based programming. And with the retirement of our planning room person, and thinking about how to keep our budget as fiscally responsible as we could, we have seen a dramatic decrease in disciplinary referrals and in behavior issues in our school as we've increased our outdoor programming and our thematic programming. We've increased our student participation in engagement in school by leaps and bounds. And this is coupled with our PBIS work in building a positive, supportive learning environment. And so thinking about repurposing our monies, we have taken our savings from the reduction of the planning room position and repurposed it for both our farm to school program and for increasing our technologist position. And we're really excited about this. We see that as part of our strategic plan in creating robust programming at the school. So we're coming into this proposed budget with a very, very modest increase. And we're feeling very good that we're being fiscally responsible. We're staying true to our strategic plan, and we're setting ourselves for the future in terms of building our programming and increasing student engagement. Thank you, David.
Thank you, John. That's a really noteworthy, important, symbolic transition from a planning room to more technology and more outdoor high engagement learning. And I think it's a good, everyone should be looking at that if that's any indication of the value of keeping students engaged and having them outdoors and working with nature and really in hands-on activities and lots of projects and learning conceptually and the effect it has on behavior and performance. That's quite a message that I hope gets widely spread. I'm not sure what more we can do than cut out this section of the tape and send it around, but I commend you for that, with you and your staff and your community, which obviously is responding by giving you their kids. So congratulations, thank you. Any questions for John? Board, staff, community, Emily?
Just one quick question. So I noticed the other schools, I don't think there was any decreases in after-school budget, although I know that after-school programming, we don't know what it will look like in this next year. But I did notice that Guilford had a decrease in after-school. Did you already mention that, or maybe I missed it? Or is there something that's going on there?
Yes, I did not mention it, Emily, and you're absolutely right. There is a decrease on the expense side with our after-school programming. Working with Frank and again, making sure that our budget is as fiscally responsible as we possibly can make it. We do have revenue on our revenue side, Emily. We do have monies from the past, from some of the fees that were that when we first started our after-school programming, we were fee-based with subsidies. And we do have monies set aside in a cash account that we're planning on using to offset the decreases in the expenses that you see in the proposed budget. We fully plan on continuing with an after-school program, and we're looking at it in a way to do it that is fiscally responsible. And I'm also hoping that as we move forward, and I'll say this, that I hope as a single school district that we can look at programming across the school district and see how we at Guilford can partner with some of our sister schools in offering rich after-school programming.
We'll look forward to seeing that develop. Other questions? Michelle, I think your hand was up.
Yeah, I actually had a question for Green Street. So if somebody wants to talk to John, I can
Okay.
wait.
Any other questions or comments for John? I don't see any hands, so go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, I was
Marcus.
also just curious about, hi Mark, about the after school programming. And I would just love to hear a little bit about it. I don't know the schools well enough, and I see that the budget for that is considerably higher than pretty much every other school. So could you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. So strategically, that was a plan of ours years ago to increase student engagement. So we had a teaching program in place at that time, and we felt like shifting from tutoring to more engaging activities would better benefit our students. So as a staff, we had that discussion, made the commitment to focus on enrichment and engagement for all students, no matter where you were academically. And basically I asked staff to provide programs that they were passionate about. So, one staff member who loves to run started a running club. Other examples would be like a chess club, a book club. There's various. Throughout a school year, we'll offer about 60 different programs throughout 3 after-school sessions. Now, of course, we haven't engaged in any of that since March, but the hope is next fall we'll continue that work. But we made the decision to switch from tutoring to enrichment, and I couldn't be happier with the growth. And kind of each year it just grew more and more because teachers and staff saw the power of it. And it's another opportunity to create relationships with students in a different way as well. But there's more details on our website in terms of the types of programs we've offered over the years as well. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. I'll definitely check it out. It sounds great.
Thanks.
Any other questions related to the budget? Okay, well, because we had the conversation about the budget under the fiscal report, and it's on our agenda as number 1 item A in new business. We'll wait till then to, I'll wait till then to ask for a motion. And maybe in the meantime, well, actually Frank's going to be busy in the next section, but somewhere along the line, Frank could maybe sort of draft out what the motion should say so that we only have to do it once. Or if not Frank, someone that knows how to do that. And I think we'll move on to the Academy Edition report.
I did have one question, David.
Yes, go ahead, Emily.
So my question was, I just wanted to know, like, I was looking at the summer school budgets, and I know each school has their own kind of programs they do for summer school. Are we thinking that overall, because I know, so my thinking is there's going to be a lot of need for remediation, and there might be some learning loss from this kind of remote model that we've had going on, so which is expected, but are we budgeting enough for our summer school? So I guess I wanted to hear from the elementary school principals, were we kind of, were we level funding that, or was it, like, are we increasing this year?
Andy, would you want to try and take that universally? I know that the CARES money is going to give us a little more flexibility next year and maybe the year after than we would otherwise have, and probably has compensated us for a number of those programs and other activities. But do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, we're still in a wait and see game about summer school. And I think much of the conversation that we've held has been on recovery planning to begin in the fall. And so I think that's where we're looking to see where the ESSER 2 and any other in gear with the Career Center, where those funds can be utilized more towards kind of after school catch-up activities. I have a sense that the summer is going to be busy with the recovery planning work as well. But we'll continue to look at how we can have flexibility with those other funding sources to run programming if possible. Right now, things are such a question mark about where our students will be in terms of where the virus will be right now. It might be premature to plan around some of those items as well.
I would just add also, I very much agree that the CARES Act is going to be very, very useful resource for us. But in the local budgets, if you just added up all the summer school programming, we have increased it from about 43,000 this year to 73,000 next year. So there is more funding in summer school in this budget proposal as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other budget related questions before we move to Academy? Okay, Frank, Adanav, I think Corey is here, and Thomas also, please feel free to weigh in. And Jackie, I hope you'll be able to join this group the next time they get together with this project. But Thomas was able to attend the first meeting, and so we're well represented.
If I could just share super brief, because I know Corey will be able to do a very good job along with Nadev on giving you an overview. But you may recall we've been saying that we need to have a few key decision points. Today would be a good one, and then relatively soon the next steps is I think Corey will outline as well, relate to how are we going to, what's the mechanism we're going to fund if the board does decide to move forward, and then we need to set up a bid date so that we go through the contractor pre-qualification process. That's all part of the state law. And this is all for the purpose of addressing what is becoming more and more urgent, meeting the needs of our kids at Academy School as it relates to functions that are occurring in a space that is fully depreciated and will not serve our kids in terms of a learning environment much longer. So this is something we've known for quite a long time, at least 3 years, and plans have been in place to get to this point. And we just want to make sure the board is aware of next steps and that we carry on here. So with that, if I could turn it over to Corey to give us an update.
Thank you, Frank. I'm Corey Frazee, civil engineer and principal of Stevens and Associates, and Nadav Malin of Building Green, and Diane Abate, our lead architect for Stevens and Associates, are also here. You've got a very busy agenda, and we don't want to take a lot of your time tonight, but thank you for having us. We want to check in with you about a couple important items that Frank referred to. I'd like to ask Nadav to start by giving a brief summary of the work we've done to date, specifically the workshop that we had on the 29th of December. And then we'd like to talk with you about some direction that we'd like from the board to keep the project moving with next steps. Nadav, can you give us a few minutes of a summary, please?
Sure. Thanks, Corey. And I've got a little show and tell to maybe liven things up here a little bit too. So let me see if we can pull this off.
Boring?
So
we putting you to sleep?
No, it's great. It's just good to mix things up. So I don't expect anybody to be able to read any of this, but this is just to illustrate that we've been doing something here, some work. This is a whiteboard, an online whiteboard that we use in our workshops. And so this is first workshop we held was actually a few months ago with just staff and our design team, where we really identified in particular sustainability goals for the project. And that was, as some of you might recall, I joined the meeting, beginning way back pre-pandemic, and was brought on to ensure that these projects at Academy are achieving the best sustainability goals they can within the constraints of cost effectiveness. And so we held a workshop to focus on sustainability goals as a team. We had a gallery here looking at the images and the opportunities at the school. We brainstormed a bunch of strategies, goals and strategies for achieving those different goals. And that turned into a preliminary table here of some of the key goals where we really focused in on energy efficiency. And there's a whole list of strategies there that we're looking at for how best to maximize that. But also comfort and health, and really creating the best possible educational environments for the students. So with that in mind, we also engaged a really top-notch daylighting consultant, because daylighting classrooms is a specialty that when it's done well, just can make an amazing difference for students. When it's not done well, there is such a thing as too much light in a classroom if it's in the form of sun coming in directly and making it hard for people to see and read. So glare control is a huge focus. Obviously now air quality is even more of a focus than it was before, and acoustics. All of these things really are critical to contributing to the learning environment. So we're really trying to make sure those are prioritized as well. So yeah, we brought in energy consultant and daylighting consultant who could really help us make sure we're making absolutely the best decisions in all these areas. And with that, we then held a second workshop. We got some board representation on that one. Thank you, Tom. And really went through and talked about how to prioritize between these different goals and how to start to balance them against the constraints of budget and schedule and functional performance and all these other things that are essential, of course, to the project. And so out of that workshop, we're building out what we're calling an evaluation matrix, where we're looking at different design solutions and different technologies for each of these different parts. There's 3 parts to this project, right? It's a small addition on the school. It's redoing big windows in 14 different classrooms. And then it's a reconfiguration of one classroom to break it up into specialized learning environments. Diane can tell you more about that. So for each of those spaces, we're looking at a range of different options, and we have a whole matrix we're building out that's going to allow us to balance all these considerations and then weight them and come up with the best solutions. And I think Tom can probably attest to the quality of the other consultants on board and the level of rigor they've been bringing to the analysis. It's really been a pleasure to work with them, and a pleasure to work with Stevens and Associates on how to make the most of a complicated and kind of disrupted project. But we're anxious to get your go-ahead to get going and start to really apply this matrix, get into the design process to make some decisions, and move ahead with being able to design and then deliver these improvements as fast as possible.
Thanks, Nadav. So this workshop in a way served as a great kickoff or launching pad to get into schematic design. And I want to talk more about the next steps of design for us, but pause there and see if there are questions regarding what Nadev just shared.
I don't see any hands up, Corey. I think
All right.
you can go on.
Great. So what we'd like to do is continue to work on these projects and progress them towards bidding, as Frank alluded to. We need to close the loop with you and make sure that we are authorized and to move forward with final design and with our efforts. We had a contract to do an update to a feasibility study. And we've done that. And the workshop was not specifically planned, but we kind of fit that in to the current work that we were authorized for. But to keep going, we need to close the loop with you on our contract and authorization to keep incurring fee.
What does that mean, Corey? What are you going to continue to need 5 or 6 consultants? And Frank had at one point mentioned 250,000 or more, possibly in terms of the whole cost of the design work, which is somewhat frightening. And I was a little bit surprised to see, even though it makes sense to add the reconfiguring into this big project, it's kind of like a mission creep scenario seems to be potential here. I'm a little bit frightened to have 6 people working on consulting, consulting to partition a room, which I mentioned to Nadev earlier. But what are you asking for, and what are you going to do for us for it, and
sure,
what alternatives are there? And the other thing is just what's the cost of the planning going to be, and then I'm concerned that the design not eliminate any options, considering that we already have a slab on the ground there. We already have a foundation in, and there is a pre-built potential alternative. It's possible to come up with a design that just eliminates that. And I want to be sure that you're careful to avoid that.
Yes, so the feasibility study that we previously did and the workshop are kind of the process to continue to explore options that will be further explored in schematic design. So we're considering all options at this point, and schematic design will be the process where we close the loop, finalize a design that's going to go out to bid, and then there's additional effort to put those bid documents together and send it to contractors for pricing. Regarding our scopes of work, the reconfiguration of the classroom, it is not the large part of the fee for our efforts. And Nadev passed along your comments. So I suppose that's something that you could work separately with a contractor on. If that was important to you or the school. It folds well into the work we're doing. And from a programming standpoint, Kelly or Diane could speak further to the importance of the classroom reconfiguration dovetailing with the addition. The plan around the classrooms includes both of those projects. You can't do one without the other.
That's new.
Diane, this is not my area of expertise. Perhaps you can speak to this, but my understanding is that there's also requirements around egress and fire codes and things like that, and perhaps the need for a licensed architect to be doing that kind of, to be signing off on that kind of creating spaces in a school. Is that not the case?
For the partitioning of the special ed room, which you are going to be breaking out into smaller rooms, you have to provide a certain amount of ventilation to the room. So there is a mechanical design that needs to be considered for those spaces. Right now, there's one unit ventilator that serves that entire room. So once you partition it and make separate rooms into it, which that separation is very important for the acoustical separation that is needed in those spaces, because right now you have bookcases and low partitions. And that's not working as far as a good education or learning environment. There's also things you need to look at in terms of, yes, in terms of egress out of the space, widths of corridors, making the rooms such that they are accessible. So there are a number of things that go into this. There's lighting. You have to consider a lighting design. But yeah.
Looks like Kelly has her hand up. Maybe we can.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly. You don't have to just jump in on this conversation.
Oh, okay, thanks. Hi, good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that, David, that you were thinking it was new, that kind of the projects relied on one another. But if you look back at last year's feasibility study, that nice booklet that Stevens and Associates put together for us, it talks about why we put all those projects into one, because the resource room and the current White House really serve a similar population. They serve our neediest learners, students on IEPs, students on 504 plans, students who need academic support teachers to work with in small groups. And unfortunately, and just kind of the way things are at Academy is, none of the spaces right now that this work is happening in are conducive to those students really having a good noise level. They're all open air spaces with dividers or bookshelves. So all of the groups are overheard by other groups all of the time in normal circumstances. Obviously, during COVID, we're not packing rooms like we usually do. But, you know, looking ahead to how we're going to remediate these learning gaps, how we're going to recover from the COVID learning losses, it's going to be more important than ever to avoid referring kids onto IEPs. And the way that we're going to do that is to have that tier 2, that targeted intervention by academic support teachers. And those are the people who will be moved from the White House into the addition. They'll have those private spaces where they can really do that work. And another really important kind of just geographical reason that I feel strongly about the proposed design versus putting something back on the slab where the White House is that that's not really an optimal part of the grounds for that to be on. The students have to go outside in order to get to that slab to the White House. So it would involve like building a really long, I don't know, tunnel or some passageway and then an addition, as opposed to just tacking it on to the end where there's already a blacktop poured. We have to have students be supervised and walk with a staff member at all times to go to and from the White House right now because they're exterior doors, so they're locked, both of which you have to enter by a key card. And in the proposed addition site, we could just send students right down the hall. You'll be able to see them. They'll have easier access to all of the younger grade classrooms, which is, you know, really important as we intervene on the younger kids. Then ideally, the older students won't need as many interventions. So really thinking about that equity piece for our learners, we don't want kids who already are out of the classroom a lot to receive these interventions to be the farthest away. So a lot of time is spent traveling from the classroom out to the White House and then back to the classroom. So they often lose 10 minutes of a 30-minute block of time to work with a staff member. So all of those things, you know, Diane's really knowledgeable. She's worked in a lot of schools. She spent a ton of time with us really problem solving that and thinking about if we seal up the resource room into those partitions, you know, where can we then put a couple of the other paras who work in that room, and they have a spot in the addition as well. So they really are pretty co-reliant. And I think also the sustainability piece has become really important as we've worked as this team and done these workshops. And the proposed site of the addition would really be nice for air quality and light as well. So all of those things, I just want you to know, have been really taken into account and thought out and talked about by the team. And we feel strongly that the addition would really be the optimal way to go for our kids.
Thank you. Those two comments are really helpful. We didn't have that information. The team has had that, but the board has not. We will still have to look at the energy costs of tearing up that slab and putting in a new foundation, and comparing the convenience and the usefulness with the costs. So we have to look at the cost of things as well. But that's very helpful to have that information and understand why it's the additional value other than just connected and hooked up to the same boiler.
Yeah.
Which is what we were talking about previous to this. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Murphy.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sean, is that you? Have your hand up?
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. You know, we've been talking about this for quite a while, and the need has been clearly articulated. And we have quite a while ago forwarded the feasibility study as something that should be done. And so that's been completed. And it sort of seems to me that what Corey said, that the next step is really progress towards a bidding. And it seems like it would be the really prudent thing to do, to go ahead with that commitment, whatever it is, to make sure that the process is continuing, so that if there is a possibility of construction, that it could happen at the end of the school year, so that we could take advantage of the good weather for a building project. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but if we put it off any longer, I think that it would be too bad, because the educational demands will not be met next year. So I would hope that the board could see with their way clear to make that progress towards a bidding happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Yep. So back to I think my first question, Corey, is what are you asking us for? I mean, how much we're not going to say, we can't really say, yeah, go ahead and we'll give you whatever you need. We need a number to approve a contract. So
yeah,
where are we?
Understand. And Frank has drafts of our contracts that he can share with you. We, in general numbers, yes, it's a lot of money, and all the consulting fees for all three projects are going to be in the range of $250,000. We have done a lot of due diligence over the last 6 weeks, talked with our subcontractors, seen where we could limit our scope, and we have included a discounted set of billing rates for the school district on this project, because we very much want to do this project for you guys, and we've looked for every way that we could reduce our fees. It is a lot of money. I understand that. I'd like to think that, being a local firm, we will bring a commitment to the project and an added value to the project for you folks that has some value. And we can talk further about the scopes of work. I think that we'd like to keep going with schematic design and answer those questions. And this is the appropriate time for us to give you a proposal and for you to authorize the work all the way through construction. So the fee and the proposal that we've worked up includes final design, permitting the project, bidding the project, and having a presence during the construction until the end of the project. So it takes it all the way through certificate of occupancy for you.
And what is the presence in, are you a board representative? Are you like our, I can't remember the name of the position where you hire someone to oversee
Owner's
the
rep.
project? I'm so, I'm not sure if that's.
Okay, so
if I could speak to that.
Great.
Yeah, Corey, I think, and Corey, I assume you don't mind if I share the proposal that you've shared with me on the fees? Yeah.
No, of course not.
So just to, yeah, to be able to address your question, David.
Project manager, that was the term.
Yes, that's why I wanted to share this proposal. Yeah, so good point, David, in that, you know, there's project manager, there's also clerk of the works. There's a number of ways in which the client, who is the public school district, you know, can gauge services to make sure that we are getting a structure that's going to last the way it was designed, and was it built the way it was intended to be. So here's the proposal, and in my experience, you know, looking at this proposal from Stevens and Associates, it is a complete proposal, which from the school's point of view, when we do not have a district-wide facility manager, you know, we have individual facility managers, but we haven't invested, as some systems have, in the sort of the professional engineer on staff that works through this process. So in lieu of that, it's important that I see this construction administration. And that's what you were asking about, David. You know, who do we have as a partner to make sure that when the contractor comes in and says, here's my request for payment, progress payment, you know, on a $1.8 million project, that we know that they've met a specification, that they've met the you know, code standards, that they are in fact delivering services, and then we understand the warranties and so on. So I'm very confident that Stevens and Associate would do that well, and that $34,000 component is very reasonable. The design, which Corey has been referring to, the design and bidding, those at 130,000, you divide that by a $1.8 million contract, that's about 7%. So, you know, again, that's a reasonable number in terms of the range. You know, 7% is kind of on the lower end, and then 10 to 12% is on the high end. And when we put all of this together, we do go toward the higher end, the 12%. But when you break it down for the services that are in this proposal, you know, these components are very essential. The 31,000 is part of this commitment that the board has made through the climate crisis group, and now this series of workshops. And then in April, when the board deliberated over goals for sustainability and energy efficiency, I think that's been a great commitment. And but there's an investment that I'm sure will give us a payback over time, the 31,000. So when we add up the components of these services, I see each one of them as essential, and the 202,000 is, you know, if we hadn't had the extra step of let's pause and look at reflect on sustainability goals, you know, maybe we wouldn't see that. But as I say, I'm glad we did. I've been committed to that my entire career, and we've seen tremendous results from energy efficiency and you know, lower carbon impact. So I think that's a very good place to be. The other thing that is in addition to this, as is noted here in the asterisk, it does not include civil. So civil engineering is, again, it is a standard part of a project that any client has to pay for. We are in a very fortunate position to have a local firm that has the breadth of services and expertise on staff that can give us a turnkey, proposal, as opposed to us going to several different firms and creating those one-on-one relationships that you hope everybody plays together nicely and everybody works together. But the more contracts we have as a public school, the more we have to manage and resolve, make sure that we don't have the finger pointing, that one firm says they're going to do it and the other firm says, somebody else has agreed to do it, and so on. And I've had to work through those things over the years. So there's the cost impact. And as I say, I do think it's reasonable. I think all of these services are essential. And when you get into the specifics of of what I was looking for the AIA contract, Corey, I know you shared it with me. B104, there it is. Okay. Yeah, David, I know we don't want to spend too much more time on that, but this document, this 15-page document, outlines the contract. This is a standard document that you would typically expect to see around who's delivering what. And when we get to the list of services, all of this is articulated in terms of what's delivered. And again, Stevens Associates is in a position, they have the experience and the staff to deliver all of these components of this project. So it's not just a bunch of pictures. We know that it is elbow to elbow with the general contractor, the subcontractors, the permitters, the oversight agencies, the guys like me that have to be accountable for various safety and building codes, liability, and so on. So I've reviewed all of this information, and Corey has actually had it available for us for it was available for our previous meeting, but as you know, we've just had a lot coming at us. So we are just getting to it now, but I'm glad we have. So there's an overview for you. And as I say, the administration's recommendation is that we do move forward with this. It's not that we're moving forward with them cutting a check for $200,000. It's us saying, okay, at the end of the project, meaning we've got a design that has enabled us to go to bid. It's enabled us to have a conversation with the public in terms of a funding platform, whether it's bond or a bank loan or something else. And then we've had Stevens Associates decide us to construct the project and to provide the oversight. That's the $200,000. What they're asking for now is knowing that that's the cost as we go through this. Is it okay to start and committing to the phases? And my experience would be to get to the bid phase, we would need somewhere around at least half of that cost incurred, so that the contractor knows what they're building. And it might even be a little more than that. It might be out of 200,000, it might be 125,000 or so, something like that. I don't know, Corey, if you have something to refine that. But my point is that what we're looking for now is board understanding that authorizing me to accept that proposal, knowing that there will be progress payments along the way, with the board's option to cancel, at some point. Obviously, we will always pay for services rendered, but if for whatever reason down the road, the board says, oh, no, we're not going to do this project, then the services stop.
Frank,
Jackie.
thank you.
Jackie has a question.
Not a question, a comment. Did Corey, you want to go first?
Okay, it's quick. Frank, thank you for the kind words. And I want to reiterate, yeah, we do see ourselves as a local partner that want to make this a success for you. I also want to confirm that what he's saying about the incurring of payments is absolutely true. We in fact have another professional cost estimate that we plan to do during our design development phase to double check the project budget since it's been 2 years. And we would be regularly communicating with the board on our progress and at that specific milestone about the project budget. And if for some reason we need to put the project on hold again, or even just stop the project, then our fees would stop when that happens.
Jackie.
Thanks. Frank, I wanted to thank you for all of those details. And I apologize that I did miss the presentation, but I did read over the materials. And I just wanted to say, not that I am a construction professional right now, having a slight background in construction, I honestly would have thought, given the scope of the project and everything that we want and also everything that we need out of this building, I might have expected this first number to be a little bit more. And I know it seems like a huge number, but for me, it does seem reasonable. And just based on, reputation of these folks that we're working with here, I do have faith that they're going to, do an excellent job. And if there's cost savings or cost to be avoided, they'll help us with that, and that they'll give us, all the really important pieces of this and care about us because they're a part of this community. I'm really happy that we have this opportunity to work with them, and I hope that we continue to do that. And thanks so much for all of your hard work up until this point.
Thank you.
Any other board or public comments? Emily, and then Sean.
I guess I'm in agreement with Sean and Jackie, and excited to see this work move forward. So I'm wondering what you had asked Stevens. Now they've Stevens and Frank have clarified what they want of us, but I'm still unclear. Like, are we supposed to make a motion, or what are we doing?
Yeah, as soon as we're done with questions, I'll ask for a motion.
Okay.
Sean, you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go ahead and make a motion. I don't know what the dollar amount would be, but I think what Frank just alluded to was that if the board gave Frank the authority to go forward with Stevens towards the bidding process, then we could, that'd be what we need tonight in order to make things happen in a timely manner. So my motion would be to authorize Frank to continue his work with Stevens towards a bidding process on the Academy project.
We have a motion, thank you, to authorize Frank Rucker to continue working with Stevens and Associates toward a bidding process for the Academy project. I want to just write enough of that down so that I can say it again and Wendy won't have to change it too many times.
I think I got it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Michelle. So it's moved and seconded that let me try it first, Wendy, and then you can fix it up. That we authorize Frank Rucker to continue working with Stevens and Associates toward a bidding. Okay, I'm stuck.
Process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bidding project for the Academy. Bidding project or bidding process?
Process.
Yep, for the Academy project. Any comments, questions on the motion?
I think it's helpful to refer to approximately $202,000 as reviewed. And I'll be sure to share that document on the website, but.
Can we say not to exceed $202,000? Then you have to come back if you need more.
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, would you add that to your motion, Sean?
Yes,
you have-
please. To authorize the expenditure of $202,000 to implement this implement this project.
So Wendy, would you read that back to us now? I think I don't see any more hands, so we're ready for a vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to figure out where to stick that 202K, but I'm gonna read what I have.
Yeah, just put it right at the end.
Oh, okay, wait,
It's
hold
fine.
on. Wait a minute. Okay, hold on, sorry.
It's okay. We need to get it right.
It's true, thank you. That's my goal. Okay, so the motion is to authorize Frank Rucker to continue working with Stevens and Associates toward a bidding process for the Academy project for an expenditure of $202,000.
I think that's perfect. John, that's your intention? Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. All those in favor, please unmute and indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Indicate by saying nay. It's unanimous and we are on our way. Thank you for, I'm gonna mess up the names. Diane, I believe, and Kelly for filling in the information gaps for us on this. It's very helpful. And I know the whole board appreciates it, not just me. So thank you. And Corey, anything or Neda, anything to closing here?
Actually, just one quick thing. I know you guys have a lot to cover. So just in addition to sort of managing sustainability goals and making sure that we're on track to do our best with those, part of my fee is a facilitator role to really keep the project moving expeditiously, but also make sure all the voices are heard. And with that hat on, I just want to say, David, I've really appreciated your making sure that we're considering all possible options and throwing in ideas that might not be typically considered for this kind of thing. And to also recognize that this is the perfect time to do that. As we start schematic design, in order to stay on a strict schedule, we're going to need to start to narrow down options very soon. So I just want to encourage you and everybody else who has ideas about how we should be thinking about that project to get them to us as quickly as possible, because I think Diane can tell us more, but even over the next couple of weeks, we want to start filling out that evaluation matrix, getting all the options on there, making decisions so that we can start getting design work, getting into the meat of design work. And it's going to really gum up the works if we start getting ideas for completely different ways of doing things once we've gone further down the design path. So now is a great time for that. Later won't be. And so, yeah, Diane, I don't know if you have more
Yeah,
to say.
that's actually, thank you for saying that. That is very true. Right now is the time. If you've got ideas, we love to hear them. Now's the time to explore them. It is the easiest time to make changes. Once we leave schematic design, it gets a lot harder. It can start impacting schedule. And really the goal here as we start schematic design or really dive into it is by the end of schematic design, we want to have enough information so you can make an informed decision about, what are we building? Is it the modular building? Is it brick and mortar? Is it, is it this? Is it that? By the end of schematic design, we need to know that. And so this is not wasted time. If you're throwing ideas at us, we love it. I love it, actually. I think it's great. It challenges, it's a challenge, gets us thinking. And it just brings more ideas. Maybe this idea might not be the one, but it can spur another one. So it's great. So this is the time. This is supposed to be fun. We should have some fun with this. And we welcome the challenge. I think it's great.
Great. I just want to add that with Thomas and Jackie volunteering to help with this process, I think, if you keep them well informed, I'm sure we won't have any difficulties going forward.
Great.
No, I'm delighted, really.
Me too. Thank you very much, everybody. We've got a great team. We're looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
Okay.
All right.
So we are on to committee reports according to agendas. Finance, personnel, programmatic, social justice, and early education, and the WSESU board met since our last meeting. So why don't we start with the finance committee report? And if I missed anybody, please jump in before we move on.
Yeah, the finance committee met and we didn't quite have a quorum, but we had a tremendous amount, so we didn't make any decisions. But we did have a lot of informational things from Frank in terms of the capital plan and the budget. Spoke a little bit about the academy project. And it was really, I felt, a very worthwhile meeting. And both Frank and Andy were there, and then Jackie and myself, and one other individual, and I'm trying to remember her name. So it was good. It was a really good meeting. So, and I would like to try to have another finance meeting. So I think it's possibly going to be the 10th of February. So, but I'll work on that schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And while you're here, did the personnel committee was scheduled to meet as well?
Yes, we did meet, and we addressed and approved 1% request from BAMS.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Programmatic and Performance Equity Committee. Actually, we have some policies to review here.
Yep, so we met, and one of the things that we're bringing to the board now is another Title IX policy. So the intention is that all of these policies, one that was approved last time to be sent to the policy committee, this one, and then potentially one at the next meeting, would all be grouped together, but they're kind of, staggering in. So I believe everybody received a copy of it, so I'll read it. So this one says the athletic department will establish specific guidelines for all coaches to follow that ensure gender equity in 1, the modes of transportation for all competitive athletic events, 2, the accommodations and length of stay before and after competitive athletic events, and 3, meal arrangements for athletic teams and coaches. The athletic department will include in an annual report summary data broken down by gender on spending allotments for transportation, accommodations, and meals for competitive athletic events. So we'd be looking for a motion to have that sent over to the policy committee.
Emily, before I ask for the motion, when these get sent out to the board, do we know if they get posted on the website with the agenda and minutes?
Yep, it was.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. I didn't think to check, but good. Thank you. Okay. Ruby has a hand up. Question?
It's not a question. It was just that I have a leadership council report and I want to just make sure we're in the queue.
You're in the queue. This is committees first.
Okay.
For a change. Thank you. Okay. Any questions about the policy recommending that it be sent on to the policy committee to develop into a formal policy for the school district? Could I have a motion, please?
So moved, Liz.
Thank you, Liz. And second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Tim. Moved and
Sorry,
second. Yes.
Mr. Chair, can you review that motion? I didn't get any wording on that.
I think what we'll send that to you so that you don't have to try to write it all down. It's fairly long, and I didn't think ahead to get that out. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'm sorry. Could you tell me again who made and seconded that motion?
It was Liz made motion and Tim seconded. And I think Emily probably already sent the language to me. I see her looking at her screen like she's emailing something.
But I realized I don't have my email open, so I have to do my password and everything.
Okay.
So I won't send it right now.
Sorry. Okay. So moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Thank you, Emily. Is there
Thanks.
anything else from the committee?
Not at the moment. And Wendy, I know that the language, because I can't email right now, the language is up on the website under the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I
Okay.
probably won't write the minutes for a couple days. So yeah, if you get a chance, but I'll also look at the website. Thank you.
Okay, yep.
Great, thanks. Let's see. The Social Justice Committee.
Yeah, so we met a couple times actually to discuss our final, basically over the past about 2 months, we've been interviewing different vendors or sources for possible training for the board, administration, and teacher leaders. And we came to a decision and we recommended a certain path for the board. And we just talked about that in executive session. So if we can today, I'd like to make a motion that we that the board allows the Social Justice Committee to go forward with our proposed training.
So yeah, just to clarify, I think it means to go forward with working with administration to plan and schedule the trainings that develop with the vendors, the contractors that we're with, just to clarify. So we have a second to that?
Jackie, second.
Thank you, Jackie. Any questions or conversation on this? Basically authorizing the committee to go ahead and starting the process of engaging these vendors to provide education to the board, the administration, and our teacher leaders around social justice. Hearing no questions. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and we have approved the Social Justice Committee's recommendation. Was there anything else, Thomas, from the committee?
That's it for right now. That was our big project for a little while.
Great, it sure was.
We probably will be meeting, I would assume, in February. We don't have an agenda yet, but that was the big thing we were working on. And again, this was a training to help us implement the commitment we made back in
Thank
July.
you.
And that's the purpose of it. And it'll be a kind of long, an ongoing thing, not a simple, set one-time session. It's an in-depth thing.
Not a drive-by training, that's for sure.
Good point.
Thank you, Thomas. That's an important clarification. Mariah, are you still here to tell us about any reports from early education? I know we got a printed report.
We have no new updates. We still are counting 185 kids. Some programs are moving into more of an extended day for second semester to meet families' needs for 8 to 3 program. The Mulberry Bush Early Learning Center has been taken over by Horizon, and they'll be partnering with EES, which Deb commented on a couple of meetings ago. So there's some good things in the works, but no change in numbers.
Just a reminder to people that the Mulberry Bush, it was a really important preschool at the retreat, which was for a little while in jeopardy, and finding someone to take it over was really, really helpful to the school district and obviously to our children. So thanks, Mariah. And the last committee, I think, that met was the WSESU board, and Carrie's not here. It's her husband's birthday. I threatened to sing happy birthday if she came to the meeting, so she didn't come. But the SU met, we tried to formalize a regular meeting time, which is the second Wednesday, and our next meeting will be February 10th. The things we've been talking about are trying to identify what we need in terms of upgrading the website, the school district and the SU website. And also we'll be hearing from about the special ed improvement plan at that February 10th meeting. So I invite people to attend to hear that. I believe that's it for committees. The leadership councils, I have Academy, the high school, Dummerston, Guilford, Oak Grove, and Putney Central all had agendas, had meetings warned on the website. So I'm assuming that if you met, you have a report. And if I missed anybody, please just chime in. But I mean, we'll just start with Academy and work my way down the line here.
Great. So Academy had a meeting, and what we discussed, Kelly reported out a little bit about the 2021 budget and plans for outdoor education, as well as plans for this coming semester's remote versus in-person students. A few topics did come up that I know that the Leadership Council wanted me to share with the board. Two such topics. One topic was just about our meeting time change. It was mentioned from the Academy parents, or from certain Academy parents, that the new time conflicts with the Brattleboro Select Board meeting. So they just wanted us to know that, and if we were going to consider anything else, to keep that in mind. Additionally, they really were hoping that these board meetings wouldn't go so late. So those were, I think probably everybody hopes for that, but I don't know that there's a real way to resolve that as we're, a conglomeration of a lot of schools and we have a lot of topics to discuss. So I did tell them that. The other thing that came up was questions about the Act 46 conversation that we had last week. They were really wondering more about the financial impact of dissolving, which I know we don't know that either. As a board, we had voted to have something for folks to vote on in March, suggesting or asking them if they wanted to dissolve the merger. So Academy said that they would be willing to lead an effort in surveying the principals on the benefits of the merger to date. I know Kelly had volunteered to do that, and if that was something we're interested in to get more information out to the public, she said she would do that. I think the financial impact of dissolving would probably be more of a Frank thing than a Academy school thing, because that's the entire district. But I did want to bring that up because they had concerns about really being able to vote on something when they don't have really any information to weigh the benefits or the costs.
That's, I'm speaking just for myself, that would be wonderful. We don't have any information. We have very little information to share. So I think anything that, if all of the leadership councils would consider talking about that and generating a list of positive and negatives, if people have them, that would be terrific. I see Liz and Sean have their hands up. We're doing leadership council reports right now, so we're not really going to have a discussion about what the leadership councils are reporting at this point. I think it's
David?
Yeah.
I just have a concern. If Kelly's going to do that, then she also needs, in my view, she also needs to ask the principals what's not great about being merged.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll make sure, Kelly's on this meeting, but I will, we'll talk about that post meeting. And I guess to David, I don't know how to resolve is Frank able to do something like that? The cost of dissolving, or would that be out of scope? Or
I can just give you a little sort of back of the envelope kind of a response now.
Not now.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, yeah. I just wanted to say that but I can't define the parameters. There's so many parameters that it would not be appropriate for me to sort of make up there, or so the answer is I can give you sort of snippets, but it would not be a comprehensive analysis, because I wouldn't be making the rules. I don't know what the rules are. When you have to define the future state, and somebody's got to have like probably a legal opinion on what is this future state.
Yeah, I think it would be unfair to ask you to do that, Frank. I think that's the answer, is that we can't really provide that.
Yeah.
Kelly?
Thanks, David. I just wanted to clarify for Liz that it wasn't a for or against. There was no stance on the merger. It was just simply a discussion about how can we gather feedback about how it's been going so far from the administration and also just the community at large. So it wouldn't be a biased survey by any means. Just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. And I think, as I said, I think asking the leadership councils would be good too, because we've had some of them have been sort of chafing at being asked to being told what the board wants them to talk about. And I think that's an example of having one board that is basically overseeing everything. But so anyway, leadership councils could also help a lot by trying to come up with, to communicate something. There are also, the communications council is taking it on in a more formal way, and maybe Michelle will give us an update on that. Let's see.
So we are
Well,
going to.
not right now, not right.
Well,
You didn't meet.
No.
Right?
The communication council is going to be meeting tomorrow. I just wanted to say
Right.
that at noon.
Okay.
And this topic is on our agenda. And so any advancement that you do on this, it'd be really great if you can keep us in the loop and keep us in that communication so that we can support distribution of that type of information.
Thank you, Michelle. Reminding people to communicate with the communications council is going to take, we're gonna have to keep doing that for a while before it becomes second nature for people to just make sure you know. Thank you. That's really helpful. Anything else, Emily, from Academy? Okay, BUHS. Do we have anybody here from BUHS to report? Who is our rep at BUHS?
Sure, David, I can report.
Yeah, who is the board member, Steve?
It's Kelly, and I wasn't quite prepared.
Okay.
But Steve, you can go ahead.
Okay, so we met last week and we had a pretty robust meeting. We reviewed the budget and we reviewed what the budget priorities were going to be next year going ahead. We talked a little bit about the process and the timeline for budget approval. We also reviewed winter sports, what the status was currently of winter sports. We talked a little bit about what the restrictions were in place from the governor. We also talked about second semester rollout. We had a good discussion as part of that about our remote schedule. And we got some really good feedback from students and from parents about the pros and cons of our current remote schedule. We talked a little bit about why the schedule is shaped the way it is. And that was a quick summary of what we really did. Any questions?
Sounds like a pretty busy meeting.
It was a quick 57 minutes.
Not exactly light topics.
No, everything was, yeah. But it was great. We had 5 students there, and they were phenomenal. They were absolutely deep in the process. Didn't shy away from talking or sharing their opinions. It was great.
Great, that's good to hear.
Thank you, Steve. I just didn't get back to my computer in time, so thank you.
Yep, sure.
Dummerston.
Dummerston met on January 7th. I was not able to attend. I'm not sure if Liz did. It came up in the communication council that to try to make an effort if board members can't make their leadership council to have a backup board member try to attend. So I'd reached out to a few people. I don't think they were able to attend either, and Julianne's not here. So we'll have to catch up on that next meeting.
Thanks, Michelle. And one of the things on the agenda for the Leadership Council Summit is to have a backup board person if somebody can't attend. So it's on the list. Great, thank you. Guilford Central.
Yes, Guilford Central Leadership Council met on Friday, January 8th. Once again, kind of a robust number of 14 individuals present. We did talk about initially the motions that this board had made in terms of the dissolution and also the Finance Committee. And then John gave a very comprehensive plan your work, work your plan overview of things that are going to be happening at Guilford School in terms of the second semester. A lot of details, and there was good input by just about everybody at the meeting. And then the Guilford Leadership Council is going to have a evening parent student time opportunity for everybody to share positive and negatives. And that'll be January 20th from 7 to 8. And then the Leadership Council itself will meet again on the 22nd. And that'll be at 1 o'clock. And then the Leadership Council is also planning to make a pre-town meeting presentation, which will occur on February 18th. And that's, we always have a pre-town meeting at Guilford. And so the Leadership Councils will spend that time making a presentation of what's been going on at the school and the larger district. And so I'll probably attend that also. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Oak Grove.
Oak Grove, oops.
You're there.
Am I?
You're talking. We got you.
Oak Grove met on Tuesday a week ago. We had a very good discussion. One of the topics was reopening, and I just continue to be amazed at how all the intricate planning that goes into moving back into in-person training, in-person learning. One of the suggestions, there was a COVID guide for families. I believe it was a hard copy that was sent to families last semester. A suggestion was made to update this guide and to send it out again to families for the reopening of for the second semester. So that was one suggestion. We had a very good discussion about social emotional learning. I discovered that Oak Grove has a resident expert in this, Jamie Scanlon, who's working towards her degree in it from Rutgers and teaching social emotional at Oak Grove. One of her recommendations was that we hire a consultant to look into the collaborative for academic social emotional learning, CASEL. That's currently being adopted by the Missisquat School District in the north. And one thing that came out of it is, well, Panorama is doing assessments, and I understand from Andy that it'll be a year before we have data on how well we're handling social emotional learning. But it seems like the schools are doing a good job of using Panorama to first assess how the students are doing. CASEL would offer a very broad, comprehensive set of competencies and teaching strategies for improving social emotional. So I'm hoping that Jamie can join one of our meetings someday to give us her thoughts on SEL. And then I guess that's all. Oh, we did talk about the merger. I think the feeling was that Oak Grove was fine before the merger and would be fine if we went back to demerging. And we're doing well with the merger. So things are good at Oak Grove. That's all.
Thank you, Tim. And Putney Central.
Hi, Ruby McAdoo. I'm the chair of the Putney Central Leadership Council. We met on the 7th of January, which was right after the start of the school year. And we talked about and touched on the various projects that we have under the categories of community engagement and values, and then projects and physical support of the school. So I'm not going to go through them because we really, with the transition of the holidays, I wouldn't say it was the most like, great, we got stuff done meeting, but we did talk about all of those things. And it's in the written report that will be on the website in the agenda section of leadership councils. The two things that I would call out are that we also discussed the possible vote on the dissolution of the merger, and particularly our concerns about having adequate information that we would be able to give to our community to inform them. Since then, and since I wrote the report, actually, we have found out about the Communications Council's meeting, and so I will attend that and share some of our thoughts and ideas. And we are, as I think many of the leadership councils, ready to help assist in getting the word out and getting information to our residents. And then at the end of the written report that I sent you, I just wanted to remind the board that we had previously submitted a request that the board establish a discretionary fund in the budget for each of the leadership councils based on the calculation of $2 per pupil. And I've been observing the budget process and haven't seen quite exactly where that conversation would fit. So I haven't brought it up, but I know you're on the precipice of action. And if that is not something that's being considered, I'd like to have a response and understanding of why. But it might also have gone through the cracks. So that's the only thing oh, and then also we had a meeting that was scheduled yesterday that we ended up canceling because we realized it was Martin Luther King Day pretty late. And our next meeting is the 1st in February. So we're only having one meeting in January. That's all.
Thank you, Ruby. Depending on what happens after we adopt the policies and get to new business and vote on the budget, it may be a little late to add stipends, but there are places in the budget where that could be, we could probably find resources for that in some of the boards, lines. Or the other opportunity would be for the leadership councils to apply for 1% funds to spend on their work. Or the board would apply, I think, through leadership councils. But at any rate, that came up, and also the question of stipends for teachers. And it just never got on an agenda or into the conversation yet. But that's part of being new, is there are lots of cracks that things slip through, but the cracks are also where the light comes in. So
thank you.
Good to have them. Thank you. So I think that's all that I had for leadership councils that were on the website, the Warren meetings. Did I miss any? Oh, Ann, I see Ann's hand up.
Thanks, Dave. I'm only doing this because I cannot find another place it would fit into the agenda.
Okay.
Earlier in this discussion, we discussed some principals trying to gather information about the opinions of families. Given the history that went with the Act 46 merger process, I would prefer that this board, or at least the Communication Council, be allowed to understand the nature of the questions that will be asked. Because I found a number of people to be leading their families in a direction that particular people wanted them to go. And I'm not interested in that happening again.
That's a really good point, Ann. We probably should have that on an agenda, because I frankly, I didn't think of that. I was thinking about it purely in terms of gathering information, but for people that weren't part of that process, it was an astonishingly partisan process, very divisive. And I don't want to really say anything more about it, but one of the reasons that I've been hesitant to have us talk about it is because of that experience. And I think that for now, we should probably ask the principals to not engage in any activities around that until we've had a chance to talk about it.
Thanks.
So we're gonna, I'm trying to see if we don't have anything else on the agenda, but since it's come up under leadership councils, I think it's fair for us to consider that. And I think we should take a minute to talk. It's only 5 minutes to 9. It's early for us. Just take a minute to see if people have immediate thoughts or responses to that. I don't want to make a decision quickly at 3 hours into a meeting that's a really bad idea. But at the same time, I don't want us I think we need to talk about that and think about that, because this is such a divisive topic. And it's done so much damage. It's just, we really need to be really careful about how we go about it. So Liz and Michelle?
Yeah, I think, with the boards that we've had so far, they made a huge effort so that families wouldn't really notice a difference between having their own board and this board. I think the only difference maybe most people have seen is that you can no longer go like to your town school board meeting. You have to come to this one. And thank you, David, for recognizing. Well, that was you voiced my concern better than I did, because it was a very divisive and slanted process that went on before. Thanks.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just looking for clarification on what Anne said. Did you say that there's been conversation about principals reaching out to their families to, I just kind of missed it. It's nothing I've heard talked about. Or are we talking about Kelly Diaz talking about polling principals to gather information or their feedback?
I'm talking about principals gathering information from families without us knowing the nature of the questions that they're going to ask.
Okay.
And if you can hear the tension in my voice.
No, I didn't know that was an issue. So I'm hearing that for the first time. Yeah, that's fine. And yeah, I mean, again, this is on the agenda for the Communication Council, but anyone who has feedback from prior experience, we could use help in how to navigate this forward so that we can provide information to the community. That's been my only concern, is this is happening so quickly. I think Sean had sent something out that like 30% of our community voted, and it was just a little over half of that didn't support. No, it wasn't supported. But 30% doesn't sound like a lot to me. And when you're coming down to maybe 16 to 20% are voting against something. So I just want to try to make sure, being part of the Communication Council, that we have solid, no biased information to just provide, like, just here's some information. And I think that getting some feedback from some of the administrators will be an important part of that. They have perspective, that I can't begin to think about, but I would very much like to connect with anyone who can offer some guidance on how we might move forward to gather information and distribute it. I mean, I have a grasp on how to distribute it, but but just to figure out the best way to do this so that we are being accountable and responsible, and making sure that we are handing as much information to voters so they can make an independent decision, based on information that they're holding in their hands.
Anne?
Not to put too fine a point on it, but our town clerks reported that this was a record turnout for a single issue vote, and it won by a significant margin in every town.
And I can't think of a better example of how divisive every single bit of this becomes. Because, to discount the will of the majority because everybody didn't vote is not what we do in our democratic process. The majority wins. And it was a massive turnout for a single issue. But that's my side of it. That's the way I see it. Other people see it as well. Not everybody wanted it. So maybe we didn't get what the community wants. So we're asking for a vote, and we'll try it again. But it's just such a divisive issue. I'm asking for guidance now on what message we should ask Andy to communicate to the administrators until we have a chance to talk about this. So, Andy's going to have some advice. Thank you.
David, I think Kelly wanted to compile feedback from the administrators, was my understanding. I don't really recall any sort of conversation she wanted to engage with families on this topic.
Okay, well, I think that Anne's question, goes that way as well, because the question that you ask someone often has a lot to do with the response that you get. And if there are going to be any questions, again, the board needs to talk about this before any questions get asked.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful for the board to create some level of a survey or feedback. We would take the guide, given the history of this and the nature of it, we would want to look for feedback from the board in terms of what questions we would want to ask the community in terms of surveying what their information needs would have to be, as well as any information that they would want to share. We would look to the board for that level of kind of question development.
Great. Okay. Tim?
I think it would be devastating if we had another vote and nothing became of it. The AOE said, well, we're still going to go ahead with the merger. There's no more alternatives. You can't go forward with any changes. I think it has to be made crystal clear that what the results of the vote would entail.
Well, just to clarify, if a town votes to leave and the other towns agree, the agency cannot, they can only approve it unless the town doesn't have the ability to provide for the education of their children. But again, this is, these are all parts of the conversation that we,
Then there's what if one town, two towns vote for it, three towns against, and
yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, it was, yeah. Kelly.
Crystal clear why they're voting.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Tim. I thought you were done. Go ahead. Kelly?
Thanks. I just wanted to bring up the context of our conversation was really a question about how, I guess, the understanding of Act 46 and the merger and information at the same time would be gauged from the community more than, it was to gather feedback about how it's going, but also just, it goes back to what Michelle said at the last meeting about a lot of people didn't really, or may not understand what it is still. I agree, it was a really passionate issue for a lot of people, but I think a lot of people still might not really know what it is. So my point in that was just really to get information out to the community. How can we make sure everyone's educated, and then kind of gather feedback from those who have been following it closely. And, I think it would just be a nice opportunity for principals to talk to the board about how it's going from our perspective too, because it's something we've never done. So it's kind of interesting to think about what we have done since the merger. And if it's something we want to keep or something that we, I don't know. I think probably everyone has a personal opinion on it, and then we have a professional opinion on it too. So I think it's important to, like you said, keep it very, no one's taking a stance. It's just that it's important to look at the fiscal impact. It's important to see how we've collaborated and what makes sense for the future. And then also make sure the community's educated before a vote happens.
Thank you. Still, what do we want to say between now? We will put this on the next agenda. We'll put a time limit on it, and I think what you just described, Kelly, would probably be the best thing. The best thing to do is to ask the principals to provide some feedback on how it's been going for them, and if any teachers wanted to participate, they would be welcome as well. We might want to make that a public forum. I'll think about it and consult a little bit and see how we want to go about that. In the meantime, does the board agree that we would prefer the employees or the administrators not make any what would be the purposeful attempts to share information or gather information about the merger until we've had time to talk about the vote, until we had time to talk about it?
Absolutely.
Just other people just weigh in. Do you think that's the way to go forward for now? Yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
I agree, and I would also just recommend that anything that that it's collaborative with the Communication Council and or the board as a whole. But we're always available, and would know if we need to come back to the board with whatever's being presented to us. But I think it needs to be a group effort.
Yeah, and I can't overemphasize the importance of transparency. There's just it's such a bad taste in so many mouths. on both sides of this. So, other people, do you think this is the way to go forward? Or at least for until our next meeting?
I think so.
Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Okay, like that's what I would ask is for Andy to communicate clearly to the administrators not to engage in information gathering or in what's the right word? Instigating, I can't think of a better word, instigating conversation. If people ask you questions, obviously people have opinions and you're welcome to respond as a citizen, but to not be taking any position in favor or against or gathering information until the board's had a chance to talk about it more. Is that clear enough? Andy, is that clear enough? Michelle, go ahead.
And I just wanted to say one more thing. I'm just looking. So this vote could potentially be, I think, March 3rd, correct?
It will be March 2nd.
March
town meeting
2nd.
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that only gives us a month to our next board meetings in 2 weeks. And then that gives us a month. So I don't know, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but I would hate to just not do anything for the next 2 weeks. So if there is efforts like surveying principals or starting to work on that, I don't think it's appropriate to be distributing anything to families or reaching out to families yet, but I would love to still see us start to collaborate efforts to work together and not wait until that next 2-week meeting. That's a third of our time before the vote, and that doesn't give us a lot of room. So
yeah, I don't know what to say. We can't, and if we're gonna put out information, I'm not sure what the process of deciding what that is, other than the board. So maybe we should see what's developed in the next couple of weeks, and we may have to have an extra meeting, or maybe just schedule again. We need to figure out how to solve this. So we may want to have a public forum where people can come and talk, or have a forum where we ask the principals to tell us what their experience has been, and we ask teachers to tell us what their experiences have been, and that's what we put out, the recording of that meeting. We need to think about it and figure it out, and because I sure don't have an answer. Maybe Tim does. He's got his hand up. Tim?
No, it's a question for you, Michelle. What would you recommend that leadership councils do? Because this came up in our leadership council, and it was a nice discussion that wasn't needed. People had, thoughts on it. So within the next 2 weeks, what do you say to LCs?
Yeah, and it's on the agenda for Dummerston for February 4th, I think it is, to have this conversation. I think knowing what the questions are would be very helpful. I think that's the most important thing is, what do people want to know? I mean, people don't always know what questions to ask, but that's the kind of information I would want to know. So we know that we're hitting, we're hitting on what information people feel like they don't have to feel informed. So, general sentiment, that's great to know what the school vibe is. But I would like to know, specifically what kind of questions come to mind, so that we could try to get that information and put it together. That's it. And so then I just want to be clarified, because I don't want to overstep in the communication council, but since this is on our agenda tomorrow, can the communication council work with Kelly to just give the okay to if that's only the first thing I've heard, the first suggestion of maybe collaborating, putting some, information together, like administrator feedback, that's reasonable. Is that something we can talk about, or are we just not doing anything for the next 2 weeks?
I think the leadership council should definitely talk about it. I'm not sure, absolutely. It's just the more conversations, the better, even if it clarifies questions, what the questions are, or shares information, whatever. Talking about it's really important. I'm just not sure what we as a board or as an enterprise or an institution with employees and governance responsibility should be saying about it, or what the questions are that we should be asking. I mean, gathering information is definitely what I'm struggling with what we should be doing and what's possible to do within a month. And the other thing is that, how many people are actually going to change their mind no matter what they hear? So there's that problem as well. So I think I'm going to leave it at we're going to, that the communications, the leadership council should absolutely talk about it. It's not necessarily a directive from the board, but that it's certainly important for them to talk about, and they probably will anyway, because the ones we heard from did. The administrators should not engage in promoting or advocating or instigating conversations. They can certainly respond as citizens to any questions or concerns that people have, and they can share them with the board. The same with teachers or anybody else that in the system. And we will look into having a Zoom forum on to hear from the school community, the teachers and the administrators on their responses to what's happened or to the change, because they're the ones that, if anything's being affected, I see you, Mary, I'll be there in a sec, but if anything's happened and changed, they're the ones that are going to know. All we know is that the board operations are really different, and there's way more to it. And a 147-page budget is very different than a 7-page budget. But as far as the actual impact, it's hearing from the practitioners is probably the best thing we could do. So go ahead, Mary.
Thanks, David. That's perfect. Perfect segue. I just, as Michelle was talking, I was thinking one thing that probably would be good to focus on is really the kids and why we do all of this. It's a lot of work. I know coming to these meetings they're long, they're arduous, they're tedious, but the bottom line is everything we do is to benefit the students in our community. And that includes all of the towns in this district. And I think I could just speak very briefly that I have seen, a lot of collaboration come from this. And so to be able to hear what's happening across the schools in each town, and then as a whole district, what are we able to do, and really keep the focus on what's best for our kids. We also have to think about taxpayers and that as well, but how do we combine both of those things? What's best for our kids is the bottom line. And from there, how do we make that? How do we pay for that? How do we do all of that stuff? And what's the best way to do that? So I really appreciate you, David, thinking about, the people who are in the buildings doing this work and seeing the benefits and seeing some of the things that we miss out on from not having our local school boards. I think it's really important to get that insight. And so I appreciate the opportunity to do that and would be happy to speak at a forum on behalf of the kids at Oak Grove.
Thanks. So I think we're going to move. What I've got written down is I know the Communications Council is going to do work, and they will certainly communicate with us. And I'm going to look into how we would put together a forum to hear from our practitioners about the effects, and as Mary said, particularly focused on the effects on the children. So that's what I'm thinking about moving forward with. And so I would love to move on to our unfinished business. And seeing no hands, I think we will do that. So, this one. The first thing in unfinished business is an approval of a request to allocate funds for lobbying activities supporting legislation to implement the recommendations of the pupil weighting study not to exceed $3,000. And there is actual language that I will find here, I hope, and send to, well, maybe I'm not going to find it. But that's the, there is language that cites the Act 176, Section 13 or whatever it is. But basically, this is a follow-up to our decision to participate with the statewide coalition of school boards to promote the implementation of the findings of the per pupil weighting study. The State Board of Ed is taking this up tomorrow. the coalition is meeting on Thursday to determine next steps and which of the lobbying firms to hire. And there's I do have, I think this is a letter from Bill Mathis, who's a member of the State Board of Education, a longtime educator and consultant in the state, and he's talking to put together a work group charged with developing plans for implementing the study. So it's on multiple agendas and in multiple taking place in multiple areas, but the need for lobbyists is obvious is what's in front of us now. So I will actually move that we approve that we allocate funds for lobbying activities supporting legislation to implement the recommendations of the pupil weighting study, not to exceed $3,000. And the coalition on, well, could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. The coalition is going to meet on Thursday, and I think that probably the Burlington School District will be the institution that manages those funds. So that's where it would be going. We'd be pretty safe in that. If not, there's a nonprofit called the Alliance of Vermont School Board Members, which I happen to be a founding member and a treasurer of, which was formed to raise and manage the funds for the Supreme Court challenge to the forced mergers. So I'm sort of hoping that they will go with Burlington School Board instead of the Alliance, so that there's no conflict. There's not a conflict there, but I wouldn't want the appearance of one either. So Tim and then Thomas. Thoughts, please.
Completely, I think this would be money well spent, and I urge all of us to lobby our own legislators to pass the study.
Thank you. Thomas?
Yeah, and forgive the baby crying.
Oh, sure.
Regardless of the merits of the legislation, I have a really hard time spending taxpayer money on lobbying, even for good causes. I would just urge that we lobby our legislators directly. I can't really tax somebody to lobby.
Thomas, I understand that completely. I think it's important to recognize that most of our administrators' contracts include a benefit, which is to pay their dues for the various lobbying organizations, the Montpelier Superintendent's Association, the Principals Association, the Special Educators Association, the Business Managers Association. We, in their pay packages, is the dues for those lobbying organizations. So we do it on a massive scale. And this one, Frank, have you had a chance to look at that B1 proposal, the one that's being put forward, and have some sense of what the advantages would be, the payback on this investment, basically? I don't know.
Are you talking about the UVM study?
Yes, the one the legislature sponsored. Yes.
Yeah, it definitely would be in the best interest of our region, given that we're a poorer region than the rest of the state. One of the statistics, I think it's in the back of the appendix, indicates that our $1.70 tax rate that we've had for a few years would be more like $1.50 if our poverty that we have received the weighting that the UVM professor and the analysts suggest would take to remediate the essentially the trade-off from not being as well supported. So, definitely a favorable impact on our system.
Sean?
Yeah, I would agree with Thomas that I don't think that this is money well spent. And, I mean, I contact my legislator when I have concerns and suggestions. And she's always very, very happy to listen and get all kinds of information, and likewise for my own senators. So, you know, I just, I don't know. I agree with Thomas. I would vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Ann?
I'm afraid I must point out that not a single one of our local legislators has signed on to this piece of legislation. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Liz?
Yeah, I think what some people may not realize is the amount of lobbying that goes on in Montpelier. There is a tremendous amount of it. And the legislature may not want to do this because this is a weird year. But I think it's money well spent. I mean, I've noticed being up there that everybody's lobbying. It's crazy. You would think Vermont wasn't that way, but that's the way it is. So if we could save our taxpayers money by getting this to go through, that would be great. And it would more than pay for the couple of $1,000 bucks.
Any other comments? Okay, we're gonna do a roll call ballot. I'm gonna go by town. So I'll start with Dummerston. Thomas, yay or nay? I'm asking for yay or nay.
I'm a no on this one.
Okay. Michelle?
I support it.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Liz?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Sean?
No.
Jackie?
No.
Emily?
Abstain.
Tim?
Yes.
And I vote yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow. This is the closest vote we've ever had on anything. Holy cow. We have 6 yays, 3 nays, and 1 abstention. So the motion passes. Next is policy adoption for D12, prevention of harassment of employees, F29, limited English proficiency students, and F39, students experiencing temporary housing insecurity. I think Ann was the one that fixed the name on that one. Thank you. Could I have a motion, please, to approve those 3 policies as presented?
So moved. This is Ann.
Thank you, Ann. Second?
Emily, second.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded to adopt policies D12, F29, and F39. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please unmute and indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the policies are adopted. We have an item C here, which I just neglected to have Barb remove, which is WSESD board evaluation. So we'll skip over that, and if somebody has some idea about what, other than what we have talked about under that is we need to talk about, please let me know, and I will get it back on the budget, on the agenda. Now, action needed, a FY22 proposed budget. What is your pleasure regarding the proposed budget? Somebody said, oh, Sean, sorry. I see this big hand, but I couldn't see whose it was. Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that the WSESD board approve the budget for FY22 in the amount of $52,103,190. And that's it.
Great. Did you get that, Wendy?
Not exactly. Sean, can you repeat the dollar amount, please?
Yes, 52,103,190.
I did get it. Great, thank you.
And Sean, would you?
Which represents an increase from the previous budget of 1.8%.
Thank you. I was just about to ask you to add that. Perfect. Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second, Ann.
Thank you, Ann. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Oh, Tim? Oh, you're getting ready to vote. Sorry. Okay, I saw you on mute. Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by unmuting and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the motion is approved. Thank you. We are off. And thank you to the administrators for putting it together and for the terrific presentations. We didn't exactly do a nuts and bolts exploration of the expenditure items, but we certainly got a good sense of the importance of the work and the values that are represented and so effectively part of our school communities. So thank you for that work and for the hard work in keeping it at a 1.8% increase, especially since we don't really know what's coming. So next is a board statement that was submitted by one of our members for the board to consider approving, having to do with, well, I'll read it. To WSESD students, staff, and administration, with you, the members of the WSESD board witnessed the shameful events unfold at the Capitol building. Like you, we feel anger, frustration, and sadness at this violent, unlawful spectacle, an affront not only to the Constitution and the rule of law, but also to human decency and moral duty. As a body, we are committed to the social, emotional, and academic growth of students who will reach their fullest potential as members of our society. Our hope and expectation is that the events of January 6th will offer an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the essential lessons of civic responsibility, racial equality, and moral integrity. It is an opportunity to reconsider what it means to live in a society in which law comes before our political preferences, and an opportunity to realize that the preservation of our democracy depends on an educated citizenry. As a school board, we thank and will continue to support the administration, staff, and superintendent who work so passionately to achieve this end. And I would like to move that and ask for a second.
Okay.
Thank you, Sean. Kelly, you have a comment?
Well, I do. I don't know if it's appropriate now or if it's appropriate after, but it is in regards to this.
Well, go ahead then.
So I'm going to hopefully not date myself by saying that when I went to BUHS, we had things such as the Model Congress, the Model UN. We had different things like that that really helped to educate the student body on how things worked and people's roles and, you know, that sort of thing. And I'm not sure how long that those things haven't been held there, and I'm not sure when the appropriate time to really discuss that and make the suggestion, but I would really, really, really like to see some things such as those, or, you know, I mean, I'm sure that there are other ideas that the community can come up with, but I think it really is important for our students to learn what civics is and how things work. And I guess that's, I mean, maybe that's evident in some things that have happened of late. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And it's really excellent timing because I was listening to Zooming one of the Senate Committee on Education sessions last week, and they were talking about some of the goals and things they wanted to work on. And one of them was to take some action on promoting civics education, perhaps requiring a civics course in all Vermont schools. So you timed that perfectly. And it also, well, let's take a vote. And then there's one more thing I wanted to say, and then we'll see if we have any public comment on non-agenda items. I don't see any further comments. Oh, Andy has one.
David, just before moving on, did you vote on the articles? I think that was your.
No, I postponed the articles until Tuesday. Next Tuesday, we're going to have a separate meeting after we sort through the confusion.
Gotcha.
It was way too short a time to try and open that up.
Yep, gotcha.
So, okay. So all those in favor of supporting this resolution, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, it unanimously approved by the board. Thank you. Is there any, well, before we do public comment, one of the things that that this resolution and recent activities and then the Senate Ed Committee conversation got me thinking about is that there are a lot of things that the members of this board, I think, would like to talk about and would like to address and would like to have some information about or hear reports on. And we've unfortunately have to have been really reactive this year because we're in the worldwide pandemic. It goes without saying. But I think that at the same time, I think it would be helpful for us to spend a little time thinking about what are some of the things that we would like to explore just in terms of broader issues or broader questions or broader things that we would like to see in our community would like to see in our schools and in the education process. So I wanted to invite people to take the next week or two and kind of think about what sorts of things you'd like to hear about or us to talk about or explore a little bit. And civics was the thing that came right up, but we have had a transition to proficiency learning and proficiency-based assessments. And I don't know that any of us have really very good information of what that means or what that looks like. And I think maybe having that, that's something I would like to hear about. I would like to see some examples of what they are and maybe even hear from students about it. There are any number of other things that we might want to take up. So what I would like to invite you to do is to think about that. And as you have ideas, send them to me. And I'll keep a list and we'll kind of go through it at some point and maybe prioritize and then get a few other things on our agenda that are kind of thinking ahead or understanding better what's going on or having a more intimate sense of what goes on in the buildings. The elementary principal presentations tonight were a really excellent example of how easy it is to find out what's going on in the buildings. We just have to create time and invite people to come in and talk to us about it. So think about what would you like to have people come in and talk to us about? What would you like to know about some of the other schools? I bet some of you didn't even know what all these principals look like in some of these schools. It's just obviously really helpful. So please think about that. And if you have thoughts, send them on to me and I'll put them together and we'll talk about what we want to do about it. And is there any public comment on non-agenda items? Seeing and hearing none, I believe that's it for our agenda.
David, I have an executive session item. I hate to bring it up. I should have brought it up, but we rose too quickly at the start.
Oh, maybe I could put us right back in that room if I knew how. No, that's great. We can do that. So we won't adjourn then. Could I have a motion, please, to enter executive session at 9:33 p.m.?
It's staffing.
On staffing, thank you.
So moved, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. And second?
Seconded.
Thanks, Thomas. Moved and seconded to enter executive session at 9:34. Sorry, Wendy. Thank you, everyone, for coming and sticking with us for all this time. And thank you, board, too.
David, I think we will have an action coming out of this, too.
We will. Okay. .48 p.m. Could I have a motion, please, to accept the recommendation of the administration as presented?
So moved.
Two. I want to say Michelle and Ann seconded it. Moved and seconded to accept the administration's recommendation. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it once again, and the motion passed. Any further business to come before the board?
Mr. Chairman, there being no further business before this board, I move that we adjourn.
Yeah, the second, please.
Second.
Discussion is, thank you again for just staying with us for almost 4 hours. And the dedication and the commitment, it's amazing to me that everybody's alert and participating and still 100%. Well, I'm not 100% here. I think I got about 70% of my vocabulary, and physically.
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't quite catch who that second was. Sometimes voices all sound the same.
It was Ann.
No, who seconded motion to adjourn? Ann made the motion. Who seconded it?
I did, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. I had it backwards. Great, thanks. So any other, all in favor of adjourning? I forgot where we were. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody want to stay up later? Nope, doesn't look like it.
I'll be up for hours, but you guys won't.
So will I. It's the shank of the evening.
God. Thank you, folks. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.